Okay, can you guys hear me now? I think you guys are getting out of the waiting room and into the actual training room. It says you are. Hi, Jean. I can see you. What's up, Rachel? Hey, Karen. Hi, Linnell. Noriko. All right. I think we're getting there. I'm going to go ahead and put our link for the workbook in the chat that is going to go along with this training. So the way that works, if you pop that link open, you can go to make a copy and then you can edit it and add whatever comments you want to and make it your own. So that link is in the chat. I'll put it in the school group too. If anybody wants that, I'll put it as a link under the questions about Evergreen that I posted last night, just for an easy access place. And then I will start sharing my screen. So is anybody here? You can raise your hand. Anybody running an Evergreen funnel or Evergreen webinar type funnel that sells a course ongoing? No? Okay, cool. So that's good because the way that I design this training is more from that perspective of like how to get started doing it. And I'm going to be teaching it from two different perspectives. So there's having a program that can be rolling enrollment or evergreen, right? Like the way a lot of people build their businesses is kind of what has been the standard up until the last couple of years, maybe where you do launches a few times a year, maybe quarterly. Um, the really big names in the industry used to do one huge launch every single year. But what has worked for my clients more often, especially people who have tiny offers that they're selling, is having something that's ongoing on the back end. So for a lot of people who have been doing more like a launch base and they go through everything live with their clients over 12 weeks, it's kind of hard to make that transition from cohort based to rolling enrollment. So that's part of what we're going to talk about today too, is how do you design the program that can be, people can come in anytime and not be confused. Kind of like the tiny offer program, it's not, you can come in and somebody else could be in the program for 4 months already and you're coming in, and I designed it in a very specific way so that if you come to the coaching calls and it's like your first call compared to your 12th call, you're not going to feel like you're out of place or anything like that. Partially because we used to just have it open all the time and people would come in and they would feel really intimidated, like, oh, they're talking about ads and I haven't even designed my offer yet. So we built a mindset module into the beginning that was all around the coaching calls. And it's like, just know that you're exactly where you need to be. Come to the calls for inspiration. Don't feel intimidated. But some of that is what we're going to be talking about today is, how do you prep for that? How do you have a program where people can come in anytime, but also how do you sell it so that it makes sense for people and that you can sell it on Evergreen or Evergreen in that you're doing like a weekly live webinar or, a monthly live challenge or something like that. So we're going to talk about different ways to be able to do that continuous selling without burning yourself out or feeling like you're in that launch feast and famine. So any questions that you guys have as I'm going, I'll keep the chat open so that you can ask any questions. You can ask for clarity on anything. I love these workshops to be more interactive than anything else. I want to make sure that you have a plan, and that even in the training, there's going to be spots where we pause and we say, like, make a decision around this. Like, what does your program look like? How often are you going to do it? What's your price point? Stuff like that to make sure that we're actually do workshopping. Not just, I don't want to just sit here for 2 hours and not help you move forward with anything. So that's my goal for today, is to make sure that we've got a plan at the end. So what I'm calling this training is the always on enrollment engine. So whether it's like something you record once and people can just opt into, watch anytime and then enroll in your program, or if it's a different cadence where you're presenting live once a week and you're inviting your list or your new tiny offer buyers to that training, I'm going to teach it from both perspectives because both of them can feel evergreen, and that you set it up once and then it's kind of, it's just like something that's on your calendar that you show up for every single week. Both of them feel evergreen-ish to me. So any questions on that before we get going, or anything that you're like, I really don't understand what that means, or I want to make sure you cover XYZ, put it in the chat and I'll make sure to keep an eye on it. So we're talking about evergreen webinars and rolling enrollment so that your program can sell every single day. That's the goal. Not just the low ticket tiny offer stuff, but if you have a course that's higher ticket, anything that's from, I'll say $297 all the way up into the thousands, this can work for that. It's just going to take a little bit different funnel setup, and we're going to dig into what that looks like today. So rolling enrollment, when I say rolling enrollment, that means that people can join any day or any week, any month, and get a great experience. We're making sure that the onboarding is the same for everyone, that the messaging is the same. We're going to rely on email automations to make sure that it's clear as people are coming into the program, whether they all come in at one time or they all come in on separate days. We want to make sure that the experience is the same. And I see a lot of people who max out their earning capability because they only allow 12 spots in an annual enrollment period. The rest of the year, nobody can come into the program or nobody gets an invitation to the program. And there are ways to make sure that you keep it open all the time while still adding some of the urgency and scarcity that works in a launch that gets people to sign up for things. There are ways to do that inside of an Evergreen plan, and we're going to talk through what those tools look like. So the things that we're going to be teaching or uncovering on this training is the Evergreen webinar funnel. So when you create one presentation, that one presentation is going to help you be able to sell around the clock, and it's going to include real deadlines. You can use different tech, different tools. There's different ways to set up the email automations to make sure that you do close the cart. There is an end date that gets people to actually take action. Having urgency and scarcity is one of the biggest drivers of getting people to commit to things, to make a decision, not just stay on the fence forever. And typically that can be kind of hard to do in an Evergreen webinar funnel. So that's something we're going to make sure that you have built into your plan. So the third thing that I want to make sure that we're covering as part of today's training is that you have a plan what to do in the next 30 days, what that could look like for you if you decide, yes, I do want an Evergreen enrollment cycle. I do want to get out of that launch mode. We're going to make sure that you know how to start building, what that could look like, and that you have a plan moving forward. So this is for anybody on this training who, couple different things. If you have a tiny offer that's up and running, I know a handful of you are either in process of building that, you played around with that idea, you're working on getting that tiny offer on the front. So this is for you. If you have that tiny offer idea, this is what's going to help you ascend any tiny offer buyers into a higher ticket thing, whether that's, could be some type of membership, could be considered a rolling enrollment experience, could be a course that you sell one time, could be a coaching program. Any of those things are things that you can put on the back end of your tiny offer that lets the tiny offer be your lead generator, lets the tiny offer attract new people into your world every single day. And then as long as you have this set up on the back, it's going to help them ascend into your higher ticket stuff. The other piece of, yes, this is for you, is if you have a program or a membership, if you have something that is a little bit longer experience than the tiny offer, if it's some type of transformation beyond the tiny offer, that can enroll on an ongoing basis. And if you're someone who's here that's only been doing launches before, if you've had, like a quarterly launch or maybe once or twice a year launch, we're going to talk about how to shift that into a program that people can come into anytime. And then you can just start stacking the revenue month over month or even week over week, or just ongoing on that evergreen cycle, instead of having that launch feast and famine, which is what I see a lot of people have when they come into it. The problem that I see with a lot of clients who come in who have been trained in kind of the typical launch model is that the calendar is capping their growth. So there's revenue spikes and then it flatlines until their next launch. This is especially people who don't have any low ticket, don't have anything else kind of in their ecosystem. They just have one product that has a big buildup. It's got people that come into it, say they open their cart quarterly. It's a really hard place to grow a business because you're leaving a lot of people out. Well, what we see typically is that any time on your email list, there's about 3% of people who are ready and excited and want to buy what it is that you're selling. So what I've seen is when you only open your program or your product twice a year or 3 or 4 times a year, there's a whole time period where only the 3% of people who are ready to buy see that launch. So you have a 3% conversion rate on your launch, which is typical, but then there's 97% of people who either missed the launch entirely, they were busy, they weren't quite ready for it, maybe financially, they weren't in a spot to be able to invest at that time. 97% of your list is not paying attention or is not present when you're only launching, a few times a year. So data says if you launch more, you'll make more money, or if you have, more open cart periods, 3% of those people are going to be paying attention at different times. So when you only open it up a few times a year, those ready to buy people who maybe missed that launch cycle, they're forced to wait. They're not able to sign up at that time. And, classically with sales, if people say like, oh, I'm going to do it next month, or oh, now's not the right time, I'll watch for your next launch. A lot of those people lose interest and they never end up coming back. They end up investing in someone else's program, something else catches their attention, they jump into a different launch when they're ready, and you're capping your growth because a lot of people miss out on that launch period and then they get distracted and they never really come back. The other problem with launching is that every launch you're starting from scratch. A lot of people have a launch plan and they go through that launch and they finish it, and then the next time they launch they start completely over. They have a new webinar, they have a new strategy, new emails, and it's always starting from nothing, and it takes a lot of energy to create all of those launch materials. And your data turns to zero too. It's really hard to optimize one launch to the other when seasonally, it could be completely different for your buyer. It could be, there's different things going on in the world, different current events are taking up people's attention. So it's just a really hard place to grow a business from more of that launch model versus evergreen, which is what I think people should be doing instead. So what we're going to be talking about, and there's pretty much the map of what I'm covering today, there's 6 different things, 6 different sections to this training that we're going to be going through. And the first one is the rolling enrollment model. So understanding how do you create an offer that fits in for rolling enrollment, where people can come in anytime, not be left out, not be confused, someone else is further in the program. We're going to talk about how to position it so that that makes sense. The second thing, we're going to talk about offers that can enroll daily. So what that needs to look like on the back end of your business system-wise to get people that can enroll daily. We're going to talk about webinars specifically. So whether it does end up being Evergreen, where people can opt in and they can, either choose the time to watch the webinar and it plays for them, or if you are someone that's like, I really like the energy of being live, I'm going to do this consistently, I'm going to do it every other week, or I'm going to do it every week. It's pretty much the same structure for webinars. So we'll talk through how to create a webinar that really does convert, a webinar that sells. And then the fourth thing we're going to talk about is if you're building an evergreen funnel, what does that need to look like on the tech side? The fifth thing is going to be traffic and the math, like how to make sure that it works. And then number 6 is upgrades and your 30-day plan. So how do you add any upsells, cross sells, and how do you get this done in the next month or so? Alana says, do you think it's worth doing an evergreen webinar? Probably call it a live class for my audience for a low ticket, under $30 a month for support community. Yes, I would say if it's a tiny offer where it's a one-time purchase for $27, then I don't think it's worth it. But community does take a little different commitment. It takes some convincing, or it takes a lot of understanding for people to know why it's a community or why it's a subscription. So I think doing it for a low ticket community makes a ton of sense because you're convincing them of even my school community. I have it just kind of open enrollment right now on the back end, and I will see much higher enrollment numbers when I have a webinar that's specifically about school, instead of like, hey, I have this thing, are you interested in it? Do you want to come into it? I think when you can build the argument of like, this is what you need the program, this is what you're going to get, and you stack it and you ask for a commitment right there, that's always going to convert better, especially for memberships or a higher ticket course or a group coaching program, mastermind, like any of those things. Okay, so part 1 is the rolling enrollment model. We're going to talk about the different offer types that you can create. I'm going to share 3 different, what I'm calling conversion vehicles, or like other people might call them hype events, or when I say like you need to make the argument of why they should join the program, those are usually going to take place in some type of vehicle. So we'll talk about what those vehicles are, and then the price points that will give you a little bit more information on how to sell what it is that you want to sell. If you want to sell something higher ticket, if you want to do a membership, we're going to talk about how to sell differently based on what your desired price point is. So I think of evergreen offers in 2 different ways. I think of it as the always available evergreen offer, where it's a training that somebody sees on your website and they can opt in and they can watch it. They can either watch it right away on demand, or there's some tech that you can set up where it's like, hey, do you want to watch this in 15 minutes or at 1 o'clock today or at 3 o'clock today? Data shows that the webinars where they can pick their time and then come back and watch it later that day at like, 1 or 5, that usually converts higher or has a higher show up rate than the ones that they can just opt in and they can say like, yeah, I want to watch this right now. Usually those ones, people will have a strong commitment initially, and then, they weren't really planning on spending the next hour and a half or hour watching a training. So they might show up for the first 5-10 minutes, and then it has a much higher drop off rate when you do the on demand. Where if you have an always available training where they can say 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock, it has that drop down where they can pick their watch time, then they're committed. They have a little bit more skin in the game of like, yes, I said I was going to watch this at 1 o'clock today. I'm going to set some time aside. I'm going to add it to my calendar. I'm going to, put myself in a quiet room so I can have my full attention on it. And then they're more likely to stay for the whole training. The thing with the always available trainings is that they can buy any day that they watch that training. There is instant access, and it's sold from that, basically on demand training. The other version of an evergreen offer or rolling enrollment offer, I use those words kind of interchangeably, is if it is higher ticket or membership, the doors are open and the delivery happens on a rhythm. So say if you're doing a weekly webinar and you do it on Monday, all the systems are always the same every week. It's kind of the same thing where you build it once and then all the same emails kick off, the same, cart closing kicks off, the same type of like come to the training on Monday, reminder emails kick off. So it's basically the same selling cadence, but if you deliver it live say mine was, I did a live webinar every week for a year. I did it at the same time, and then the emails always delivered afterwards of like, it could tell if they attended live or they didn't attend live. And we could do some cool stuff with segmenting and email automation. But the ads were always the same. The emails, like training, everything was the same. So a lot of people hear like weekly live webinar and they're like, oh my gosh, I could never do that. It's really no different than just having an hour on your calendar and you just know that you're going to show up. I liked doing that because I like the energy of being live. I like getting to hear what questions people are asking, be able to interact and build a little bit stronger relationship with people initially. Plus, I was selling something that at that time was about $5,000 from that webinar. So I liked being able to talk to people about it and be able to give them direct feedback and specific feedback based on their business too. So those are the two types that we're going to be talking about for the rest of this training, either the always available buy from an evergreen on-demand webinar or rolling enrollment from a live training that happens weekly. When it comes to deciding the price point of what you're selling, I usually say like start with the end in mind and then reverse engineer for your strategy or what it is that you're selling, how you're selling it. And these are the benchmarks that I usually consider is that when you think about what your price point is or what it is that you want to sell, if you're selling something that's, $1 to $2,000, you can sell it straight from the webinar. You don't need to talk to them. You don't need a discovery call or a sales call of any kind. You can sell it straight from the presentation. So a good presentation, we'll talk about what a good presentation entails, that can sell from that price point, $1 to $2,000 pretty easily. So the call to action on that webinar at the end is going to be, go to this checkout page, go to this link, you can go buy now. And, we'll talk about things to put on that page to make sure it converts at a high rate. But if it is $2,000 or more, you're going to see higher conversion rates or higher selling rates if you get them on some type of phone call. For a lot of people, that's their own discovery call. Other people, I always recommend doing your own sales calls first. If you can learn how to master a sales call, those skills transfer to all sorts of different areas of your life. And, but some people will get to a point where they don't have time or they don't want to make time for sales calls, and you can hire someone on your team that's taking those calls for you. And then they usually will get like 10 to 15% of the sale that they made. So if you're selling a $5,000 program, they're going to get a commission of anywhere from $500 to, possibly $750 for every sale that they close. So it's a good strategy if you're wanting to grow really quickly, or if you just absolutely hate sales calls, that can work for you too. If you're like, I'm going to bring someone on my team. Another good thing about doing it that way is it can keep a little bit of that velvet rope that I've talked about before, where if you want a little bit of separation between you and your buyers until they're into the program, that's a good way of being able to do that too. Or if you're someone that has a habit of like jumping into coaching instead of selling, that can help as well. I know that was Karen's like nodding. Yes. That's how I was too, where I would 20-minute sales call would turn into an hour and a half strategy session in the early days because I just couldn't help myself. Like I would just go so deep and it didn't actually help the conversion rates. They'd be like, okay, cool. You gave me a lot to think about. I'm like, dang it, that was not what I wanted. So selling on a sales call is I could probably do a whole training on that someday. Maybe I will if you guys want me to, but another option for that is there are different kind of outsourced, what they call like outsourced closers or people who close for a lot of people or take sales calls for a lot of people. So an easier place to start for many online business owners because a closer or someone who's doing sales calls for you, they are only commission based. So having somebody on your team that's part-time or full-time, they're going to want a full calendar of calls. And if you're just getting started with this, you might only get a few calls on the calendar every single week. So sometimes you can get like a fractional salesperson who is doing sales for a lot of different business owners. That can be kind of a cool way to test this strategy out. So the third thing we're going to talk about today, and you guys can put this in the chat because I'm curious what you think you want to do just based on what we've been talking about so far. Oh, I got to get people out of the waiting room. So there's kind of three different conversion vehicles or three different ways to do this rolling enrollment model. There's on-demand training. So put this in the chat if you think you're going to want to do on-demand training where it lives on your website. They put in their name and their email address. Maybe they pick a time when they can watch it. Maybe they just get redirected to the watch page right away. It's recorded. They can watch it anytime. And it has per viewer deadline. So if someone signs up on a Monday, they get an email in their inbox that's like, hey, you have 5 days to decide if this is the right offer for you. And then you can use different tools like Deadline Funnel that can lock them out of the sales page after X amount of hours. And then it has real urgency and scarcity, even though it's evergreen. Other options are doing a weekly live webinar. So you get that live energy where all the systems are pretty much the same, but instead of saying, watch this right now or watch this, at an on-demand chosen time for them, you say, we're going to be live at 12 o'clock on Monday. And all of your emails are based on that cadence. So you show up and then, again, 5 days after the live webinar, the cart's closed and you repeat the cycle the next week. So the offer is unique for the people who have signed up for that specific training. The other option as kind of an ongoing cadence is doing a monthly 5-day challenge. And the cool thing with challenges is that you can do it either free or you can do a paid challenge. It's almost like a tiny offer of sorts. If you do a paid challenge where you're selling it, $17, $37, they get 5 days of training with you. It can feel really valuable for them. Especially if you have some type of transformation focused program where, come 5 days and by the end of day 5, you're going to know exactly how to quit screen time or exactly how to do whatever your promise is that you offer in your higher ticket program. Okay, so you guys say, I may have to sample them all and see what works. Megan says on demand, maybe quarterly 5-day challenge. Yeah, I like that too. Rachel says, at this point, I'm trying to do an on-demand training. Cool. So a little bit of everything. Alana says, I would prefer to do on demand so I don't have to show up, but I'm worried that wouldn't work as well with my audience because it wouldn't feel as personal. Yeah, that's a good question. I'll answer that in a second. And then Jade said, I wonder if a happy medium could be pre-recorded evergreen that only runs one a day at specific time. Yeah, that could work too. I think there's different ways to play around and to test. And I know you guys hate that answer. Like, test it, we'll see. But Alana, to answer your question too, if you feel like it wouldn't feel as personal, I think a lot of it's in the positioning of it too. And you could even say that in your training of, I've thought about doing these live, but I've talked to different moms in my community and I know you're just as busy as I am and you've got a crazy schedule. And I would love to be able to let you watch this when it works for you instead of holding you hostage to my schedule. I know you're homeschooling and all these different things. So I think a lot of it is the plot twist or how you're positioning it for your audience. And it is honest that they have crazy schedules and maybe it would work better. But yeah, I think it's all on how you position it to them. So the monthly challenge is something that I think is trendy right now. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of paid challenges popping up in your news feeds. I've seen a lot of them. And if you've been wondering, like, why are some free? Why are they paid? This is a little bit of insight into that. So a free challenge, you're going to get a lot of volume. That's the way to get the most people signing up for it. But typically you'll have a much lower show up rate if people, it's a free thing. It's a 5-day commitment where they're signing up to show up for 5 days. The show up rate when you do it for free is a lot lower. You can offer VIP upgrades, like maybe somebody gets a special training or a special like bonus room for Q&A before or after the challenge. That helps you make a little bit of money, even if you are doing it for free. And this is the best for list growth. And then adding that VIP upgrade can help with sales versus the paid challenge is if you have already proven that you have a good converting topic or that people will sign up for it, you're going to get fewer people that are registering, but they're going to be far more committed to showing up. It's something just like we talk about in Tiny Offer Land, like people who pay attention, right? So if you have a challenge and somebody's paying to attend the challenge, they're going to be more committed. They're going to feel like they need to get their money's worth and show up. And what ends up happening for some challenges is that the tickets offset your ad spend a little bit. I saw someone I know that is spending buco bucks scaling a challenge. She's paying like $700 or $800 per lead to get people even to sign up for her challenge, but she's selling something that's $8,000 plus on the back end. So she can afford to, drop $800 on a lead because she knows what the back end converts like. That's a harder place for people to start. So I think if you're going to get started with a challenge, if you do it for free, just to get your feet wet, to get a lot of people there, to get momentum and excitement, seeing people, coming into your world, seeing your email list growing, that can be a good place to start. And then maybe you monetize it later, or maybe, once it's up and running, you can test it with a price tag and see if you notice any difference in the amount of people that end up buying or, who's going to convert best into the programs. And let me know if you guys, that's a good question, Jean. I've definitely been there. Let me know if you guys would want to challenge specific training of like, Monday, do this, Tuesday, do this, Wednesday. There's a whole psychological concept for why each day is what schedule, and I think it would be fun to teach that too. So let me know in the future if you want me to do a workshop on that. But the monthly rhythm is your cohort clock, and it's a really easy and natural urgency and scarcity level because it's like, hey, this cohort kicks off on Monday. And even if it's, every month has, what we used to do is like cohort A, cohort B, cohort C, and they would all be in the same community. They would all have access to the same calls, but we had a little bit of like different, and like we had a kickoff call for each cohort where I'd get on Zoom with anybody who was coming in July, and I'd like get to know them. I'd ask some questions, and then I had some good FaceTime with them when they're coming to the call with everybody who's already in the community. I was able to connect with them. I knew what their business was about. I was, remembering what their offers were when they're now in with the big group. So it was a cool way to be able to have this like cadence of monthly cohorts, but still be able to put them in a bigger rolling enrollment. Jean, so to answer your question, what do you do when two people show up for the live webinar? You put your best smile on and you do the webinar anyway. And it can be just a little disheartening, because it's like the momentum of being like, put it in the chat and then nobody's saying anything. Like it's not very fun. So I think once you go through a webinar or two like that, you're going to go into problem solver mode of like, okay, how do I make sure that this doesn't happen next time? Like, do I increase my ad spend? Do I promote it more? Do I, sell more of a tiny offer and then get more people live on the webinar? Or maybe instead of weekly for a time period, you do every 2 weeks for the webinar. You're going to create new problems for yourself if you see yourself do it and you're like, that was not fun to have only 2 people there. I got to figure out how to get more people onto the webinar. You're just going to start problem solving from a little bit different perspective. But you put it on, you get practice, you show up, and that can be, it's not a good experience, but it's good practice. It's a learning experience for sure. So that is my feedback on that. But yeah, I think every single person I know that even has huge webinars now, like has had a webinar where nobody shows up, has had a webinar where, something breaks in the automation and people forget when it is. My worst entrepreneur story is that when I was doing weekly webinars, one time, I mean, we had a huge ad spend. This is back in 2019, 2020, and we're spending a crazy amount of money to get people on the webinars every single week. We're in deep scaling mode, and we had spent $80,000 on ads for that week to get people to the webinar. And then my reminder sequence broke, and nobody had the link to show up to the webinar to gain that ad spend back and to make the sales. And I had to figure out, like, how do I not make this an $80,000 loss in my business? And I was like sick to my stomach, right? Because I knew every dollar I spent on ads turns into 3 times that in sales, but not when people don't show up to the webinar, then nobody's going to buy. So I had to figure out, like, where do I go? How do I sell this? I was like crying and just was going to puke, because that's like a huge amount of money to just lose. But we ended up being able to promote it to our email list. We regained everything we spent on ads and more. But it's a really, like, things can happen in webinars. And I think that's why a lot of people can shy away from it. But I had already, been doing it many, many weeks in a row at that point. And that's why my ad spend was what it was. So it's like my scariest entrepreneur experience was that week of like spending that much on ads. And then it all broke and I had to figure out how to fix it. But it is almost always fixable. There's always a solution. You just have to get creative. Jade says, I'm treating my upsell, so 4-part workshop, like a paid challenge. With it being pre-recorded in Evergreen, I'm not sure how to offer bonuses to the signature program. Could autopilot clients offer them a discount or a bonus offer for one day only, no matter when they watch? Yeah, there are ways to, I think I get into tech in a little bit later, so I don't want to get ahead of myself, but there are ways to put Autopilot Clients has this built in where there's timers for different pages, and you can set up where they only see the offer for 24 hours and then page expires and it redirects them to a different page, because nothing is worse than getting an email being like, this offer is expiring, and then it's fake. It's like you're going to break trust with that lead so fast. So there are ways to do it on the techie side, to have a page that shows the bonuses, and then you have to buy this in 24 hours or it goes away, and then actually make it go away. So yeah, we can dig into that in a little bit too. Okay, I think I got all of that. So you just create a monthly rhythm when you're doing it with a monthly challenge, and then you're going to treat your enrollment period as following that challenge. That's when you can book sales calls. That's when you can sell people directly from that challenge, and you just kind of get used to that cadence of how it's running. So when the way that I did this for a long time, like I always liked the idea of challenges, but for me, putting on a challenge, I just don't like the energy behind that as much. It's hard for me to show up for 5 days. I don't know if you guys saw my story yesterday, but like I have kids all over the place all the time, and especially in the summer, it just is hard for me to think about committing 5 to 10 hours of Q&A in a week. So I have always gravitated more towards a weekly webinar, was what I did for a long time. Having one presentation that I could refine weekly. I could tweak different pieces of the offer. I could test a different bonus, or add something different to the offer itself and see if it increased my conversion rates or not. And then, so I had my one presentation that I did on Mondays, and then I had 7 days of automated follow-up, asking them to book a call, asking them to buy the program. And you can kind of think about it as I had 52 enrollment cycles every single year, instead of, doing like a big quarterly challenge or an annual challenge. It just let me get a little bit more information as I went too. You guys know I'm a big marketing nerd, and I like to test things, try different things. And when I did the presentation weekly, the bulk of the webinar was the exact same every single week. The first 40 minutes were the same. And then I would mess around with the offer. I would tweak different things. I would, like, depending on what offer or what week people attended, they might see a totally different offer than the week before, depending on what I was testing or trying that week. So the cool thing about doing kind of the evergreen style with a live webinar is that everyone's getting their own day one, and the launch, everybody has their own calendar basically. So the enrollment engine has a sequence where you sign up for the webinar, you can attend it live, and then you have X amount of days after that to sign up. And then it's just going to follow an ongoing process. This is the same with Evergreen too, where if you have the Evergreen webinar, no matter whether they watch it on demand or they watch it with, pick their own time, they can opt in and get the training. And then there's usually a fast action period, whether you do it live or on the on-demand style. And one way that I've taught it inside of a program called the Circuit Sales System is that if 5 days are the, like the fast action pricing, if they don't buy in that time period, you can go into a nurturing email sequence where it's continuing to build their belief and give them more value and share more testimonials and more stories. And if for some reason that 5 day period and the lowest price wasn't enough to get them in, then after you bring them through a nurturing cycle or nurturing period, then you can open enrollment again after 14 days or so and do a different offer, or you can position it a little bit differently. Could be increased pricing after that. And this is that, if you've heard of the Circuit Sales System, that's kind of what that is based on, of like, you're going to see the best price initially on the webinar, you're going to see the best offer that I've got. And then if you don't buy it and you miss the fast action period, well, I'm still going to give you an opportunity to think about it a little bit longer and then come in for a slightly different offer just via email after day 14. And the way the circuit works is that it's all automated and you can run that same cycle the next quarter. So you open enrollment, you have different tags on people in your email system. And it's like, okay, they saw this offer 3 months ago. Now we're going to email them, hey, cart's open. We have this product available for you for the next 5 days. And they can have different enrollment periods throughout the year where you're not doing anything live. You're just opening the cart for them based on this kind of what we call the circuit. But I can do a training on that too. That's just a little preview of how that works. Okay, so in this training, you guys can put in the chat again what you think you're going to do, because there are some decisions to make around how you want to do it, what feels the best for you after seeing a little bit of an introduction of different styles of it. So the first decision is, do you want like rolling enrollment with a live webinar, or do you want it to be an always available offer that is kind of more like a course or more like a community that they're coming into? That's the first thing to decide. Price point is another thing to decide. Do you think you're going to sell something that is under $2,000 selling from the training, or are you going to sell from a sales call if it's $2,000 or more? And then the third thing to think about and decide is, are you going to start with that on-demand training? Are you going to try a weekly live webinar, or are you going to do a monthly challenge? Katie says on-demand training always available. Yeah, Katie, I know that's worked really well for you. So I'd love, anything that you want to add, having been doing this for a couple years already, I think. I'm sure that would be valuable in the chat. Megan says on demand, always available, under 2K. Alana says on demand, always available. You guys are consistent. I love to know, like, what is it about that, just because I'm curious, that seems more attractive? Is it like not needing to be live, not needing to be on, not like selling on sales calls? I know every time I put this survey, nervous system protection, yes. Every time I survey on Instagram or anywhere else, like, this is the business model that people are most excited about, is like tiny offers, hands off, evergreen, hands off. Yes, I love it. Okay, cool. So in the workbook, and I'll put that link in the chat again, just in case anybody didn't get to grab that. Make a copy of it. You can add your notes. You can put some of these decisions into that workbook, because anytime I have too many options, or I'm trying to think about, like, well, should it be this price point, evergreen, live, like rolling enrollment, on demand, like, the more you kind of stay stuck in the lack of a concrete decision, it's so much harder to take action and do anything if you can't make some of those decisions. So if at least at a minimum, you walk away from this training and you're like, okay, on demand, I'm going to sell it for $500. I'm going to, put it on my website as right away. They're going to get to watch it. That can help you be able to put words into action and actually go build the things once you decide. Megan says, I feel like I'm in a place where I just want to get evergreen systems in place across my biz and look at live options once I'm set up better. Yeah, life is hard right now with kids. You guys are my people, because same. Yeah, I think the challenge can be with live, or not with live, with evergreen, is it is harder to know what's working or not working. Like, if it's just crickets, you don't have that feedback that's coming in. So I think one thing that I would say that's not in the training is that make sure you have a like a non-buyer survey that goes out to, or even if you personally outreach people that have signed up for the training and say like, hey, I noticed that you signed up, but you either didn't watch or you didn't, enroll in the program. I'm just curious, like, why not? Because there is, I mean, ask Katie how many times she's re-recorded her training. Like it's harder to know like why it's not working if it's just out there and it's just running and you're not getting that interaction or getting the kind of the back and forth feedback on what people are thinking or what questions they have. So make sure that there's some element of surveying or asking them to give you feedback in some way, because that's going to make it way easier to either re-record the Evergreen or add a different, I'm going to test a little bit different offer. I'm going to test a different hook, see if it increases some of the conversion rates. And I am working on a calculator. I don't know if you guys saw this in school. I just created a kind of like a software of sorts where you can put in your tiny offer data and you can tell me your offer page. You can send me pictures of your ads or like put in the information of the ads, how many landing page views you've had, how many sales you've had, and it'll kick out feedback of like, hey, it looks like this is working well. Here are some things that I would optimize on your page. I'm going to do that same thing for Evergreen because you don't know what you don't know, and it's hard to understand what to test. It's really easy for me to sit here and be like, oh, test things. But I think something that I'm working on doing too is adding different tools and kind of softwares that you can put your information into, and it'll use all of my coaching information, all my feedback, everything that I've put together on my coaching calls for the last 5 years or more, and gives you that feedback so you know what to play around with next time, or maybe test a different headline or test a different hook or sub headline, or add this to your offer at the end to help conversion rates. So I think that's something I'm excited about right now. But that is, I will just preface that is one challenge of Evergreen, is that you have to be, even if it's up and running all the time, you have to be willing to re-record or to look at data and, not just like, oh, it's not working, I'm going to shut it off. It's kind of like a tiny offer where it does improve as you tweak things and test things. Katie said there are also so many pieces of the Evergreen funnel: the webinar, the registration page, the ads, the post-webinar emails. There's so many parts that have the potential to leak. So it's certainly not set it and forget it, but that can be fun. Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So the next thing that I want to talk about in part 2 of this training is how do you design an offer that can handle the rolling enrollment side of things. If you're not doing a cohort, if you're not, doing the typical, like, everybody comes in at the same time, everybody's in the same place at the program. I've seen this break a lot of people's brains. Like, well, right now everybody comes in and they're all in the same spot and all the coaching calls are, based on the same, everyone's doing the same thing, so it's easy to coach them. But it's just a little bit different mindset or mentality when they can come in anytime, and somebody could be, in the program for a year and somebody else is just starting that day. You don't want there to be any weird feelings for people. I think the biggest thing that I ran into is people would not come to the coaching calls because they're like, I have no idea what you guys are talking about. This is really intimidating. They're scaling their ads. I've never even run an ad. So I think making sure that you have onboarding set up that's going to make sure people feel like they're safe. They're not going to get buyer's remorse. They know they're in the right place. And then, when you're using urgency that's honest and the delivery that helps you stay sane, those are all pieces of this that need to work together. Okay, Jade says, you handle all of this yourself, or do you have a VA? That's a really good question. I'd love to know what you guys are using for support out there. I'm relying heavily on AI these days, like even like the tools that I'm building. I have kind of like a Claude as a VA, where Claude wrote all the code for the software in one window. And then I have a Claude extension that has kind of more hands than just or it has the ability to create things and type things, where then I had the Claude extension actually build the software that Claude wrote. So the extension is over in a different tab, and it's like logging me into high level, and it's logging me into whatever tools it's recommending that I use to like host the software. So if you have the Claude extension, it can kind of act as a VA for you. yeah, it builds amazing interactive tools. And even like getting it into the school channel for me, I had the Claude extension open that is, it's like building the products for me in school. It's like creating a new product and then putting in the description. And like I used to have a VA that did all of that kind of building stuff for me. And now Claude can do a lot of that too, even building automations. Like if you open high level and then you put the Claude extension open, then you can say like, I want you to build my onboarding email sequence for me. It can do that now. It's like it has hands for your browser, which is crazy. Yeah. So it is replacing a lot of the need to have a like a tech VA or something like that. It can't do everything, and it certainly doesn't do everything perfectly. It still can get it like 80 to 85% of the way there, and I still go in and like zhoosh up the copy so that it doesn't look completely AI. But yeah, maybe we could do an AI training. Yes, yeah. So I need this. I'm overwhelmed. We want to, whatever. Just give me a list. I mean, I'm going to do this twice a month for for the foreseeable future. And I love teaching on these specific things. So if there are things that you guys want to learn, let me know. But I think an AI training would be cool because it's totally changed my workflow. I'm doing a lot more with like AI agents helping me, even as a, like a CMO or a strategy consultant who I'm like, go research all these other things and help me implement, like give me marching orders. Knowing I'm ADHD and I have executive function challenges, like make it stupid easy for me to get stuff done. Like you can direct it however best suits you to be able to get more stuff done. So yes, I say a human VA can be very helpful for some of these things, but also, an AI VA can help a lot too. AI VA, that sounds like a tiny offer. Anyways, okay, so if people can join your program every day, won't it become chaos? That's what I hear from a lot of people. Like, won't it be really confusing? And won't I be overwhelmed not knowing where people are at? And the answer is structure that you're designing into the program. So you're thinking about if you're someone who has the launch model right now and everybody comes in and they get a welcome call or they get a welcome email and it explains where things are and how to log in, you can build all of that into an onboarding sequence that people can get any time of the day, any day of the week, any month. Like it's all going to work the same, whether no matter whenever people come into your world. So you think about, and you can kind of brain dump this, like as if you were creating an SOP for yourself. Even think through like the last programs that you've joined and think about the things that made you feel welcome or that made it clear for you, or think about where you get questions a lot. Like something that I used to get a lot is like, there's so much in here, Allie, that I don't even know where to start. And I'm so confused and I'm frustrated and I'm mad. Like, I don't know which course to watch. I don't know what my path is through it. So I can get that feedback and I can be like, wow, I really need to fix something that's going to make this a more clear experience. So I could do a quiz where somebody tells me what they've already got set up in their business. I could do like a custom roadmap that's created for them as they're coming into the program. I think when you start seeing what some of the like common complaints are or feedback that you're getting a lot, you can design the onboarding structure around that. Let me make sure I'm not missing anything in the chat. Okay, so if you know that you have a community that they need to link to, make sure that's in your onboarding email. If you know that your training is in a different area, make sure that link is super obvious. I put all of that in one onboarding email, but then I set up a sequence that's like, hey, just checking in. Did you get into the community? If you haven't yet, like here's the link again for that. If you haven't added the calls to your calendar, make sure you're doing that. And I know when I've joined different programs, I've gotten a text message that was like, hey, we're so excited that you're here. Here are all your links. If you have any questions, please text us back at this number and we'll make sure that you get information. I've joined high ticket programs where I get an onboarding call when I'm coming into the program. It was like a $15,000 real estate investing program that I had joined, and they did an onboarding call with me. They took an assessment of my goals. They made sure that I knew my path in the program of like, oh, it sounds like you want to do this kind of investing. Make sure you attend, Rachel's calls on Tuesdays because she's going to specialize in that more so. So you can think about how involved your program is. If it is higher ticket, higher touch, onboarding is always a good thing too. Otherwise, a simple text message. People just want to know that even though they're coming into this community that has people in it already, that they are welcome, that they have a clear plan, that they're not just like going to be ignored or not matter coming into the program. I think a lot of it comes down to just basic human psychology and our, hierarchy of needs. You can make sure that people feel like they've got a plan, feel like they're there, that they're seen, and that's going to help you design what your onboarding sequence could be. And it makes it easier for you to sell it anytime. So here's an example of what it could look like. On the day they sign up, make sure they get a welcome email right away. They know how to access what they buy. And I always try to include one clear step of like, hey, make sure, and sometimes you can make it curiosity inducing too, so that people actually do the thing. If it's like, hey, make sure you don't miss out on module 2, that's going to give you the secret sauce to be able to make this all work together. So then they're like, well, I got to know what's in module 2 now. I'm going to log in and actually prioritize doing that. So that's the thing that I always include in that first email. And then day through one and two, somewhere around that time period, I try to give them a quick win where they get in, they finish something, they feel like they're getting involved, they're taking action with what they purchased. Because I just want to make sure that A, they can log in, B, they know where everything is, and C, they have a plan going through the program. So what we really want to prevent with any of this is that buyer's remorse of like, I never logged in. I don't know how to use it. I lost my link. You didn't send it to me. Like that is going to increase your refund rate so much more than anything else. And then if you're not sending them the login link, then it's like, how do you even argue with that? Of like, of course they couldn't use what they just bought and they deserve a refund if you're not giving them some of these like fundamental pieces to be able to use what they just bought. The next thing that I've done in the past when I was onboarding a lot was have an onboarding call same time every week. It could be a team member that's hosting this for you where people can just office hours of like come in, figure out where the trainings are, figure out how to use the program, your own clear path through it or a customized path through it. That can be a really helpful thing to run if you're bringing in a ton of people. And then day 7, I have an automated text that's like, hey, just checking in, make sure that you got everything that you need. Or if you're missing anything, let us know. And then you can send that in an email too. That's like, yay, you're 7 days in. Make sure, check off the boxes. You watched your first training. You've got the calls added to your calendar. Let us know how things are going, what questions you have. And you can automate all of this so that you're not like, oh, shoot, so-and-so bought 7 days ago. I got to make sure to check in with them. You can set all of this up to just be delivered from your email service provider. That's like in a sequence where, okay, buyer came in on day 1, wait 7 days, day 7, send this specific email. That's like, you've been in a week. How are things going? What can I help with? Reply here if you have any questions. And sometimes people will respond to that email and they won't even realize it's an automation. And they're like, thank you so much for checking in. Really appreciate it. That makes all the difference that I know that you care. And even though it's automated, it still feels like that personal touch. So when it comes to how the program functions or what you're building into that curriculum, I always try to include some type of like a heartbeat that is consistent, whether it's a weekly call or it's a check-in, could be 10 minutes to onboard the new members, or if you have some type of reoccurring, any type of heartbeat that's in that program, it's going to cover coaching and retention and make sure people are using it and they're yes. Okay. Making sure that they're able to attend and get out of the program what they're hoping to get out of the program. I also always try to have some type of base curriculum where even if people can't come to the calls or they say they buy on a Monday and the next call isn't for a week, for the first 7 days, there's some type of core curriculum where they can come in and they can get into the first module. I always try to have a pinned like start here type of training that tells them how to get the most out of the program. Usually that's a really heavy like mindset type training where the biggest objection or the biggest reason that I see people drop out of programs or ask for refunds or like stop believing in that the process is for them, it's usually around just self-belief of like, I bought this and I didn't use it, or I'm not coming to the calls, they're not working for me. So if you can really hit the mindset challenges, say you're a fitness coach and people are going to usually fall off around week 3. I mean, maybe you even build in that like mindset type training of like, hey, it's week 3. I know things are going to get hard. Watch this training right now. Or, Katie, like you've been working hard on your curriculum and you just got a bad test score. Here's how to kind of pull back into what to do next. Or kind of, if you know your audience well, you can build that into the curriculum of like, here's what happens if you start falling off the wagon or you start feeling like the process isn't for you. Usually for me, it's people launch a tiny offer, they're running ads, they haven't made any sales yet, and they're like, well, it's not going to work for me. I could pull them back in with a training that's like, actually, here's what we need to do next. Let's look at the messaging of the sales page. Let's look at your ads. Like, let's kind of figure out how to keep going and not lose momentum, even though you launched and failed. Like, let's keep going so that it's always going to work out in the end. You can kind of build some of that stuff into your curriculum, both onboarding and then maybe the rocky phase of what it is that you're teaching, because that's human nature, right? Like every single time we do something, especially I can't remember what the psychological principle is, but there's the principle of like, we start something new, we get excited about it, and as soon as it gets tough, or as soon as we kind of hit the challenge of implementing this new thing that we're trying to learn, a lot of people will just abandon ship. Like we see people with ADHD do this with hobbies, like sourdough. Oh, it's hard, I don't want to do it anymore. Gardening, like it happens a lot for a lot of different reasons, and I think as creators we can take it personally, but we can also prevent it, or we can try to build it into the program. So it's like, this is a totally normal part of the process. Let's keep going. Let's keep, pushing forward. The other thing that you can do is have a new member spotlight where any new people that are joining, you could announce them. If you have like a membership model, you can say welcome and tell us about yourselves. And then they feel like they're getting a chance to introduce themselves. You can even have like a welcoming committee inside of the program that is part of the group, and it's their job to make sure that new people, their introductions are responded to. And you can kind of build it into the culture of the program that you're running too, of like, this is what we do. And you can even put it in your trainings of like, this is how we welcome new people. This is how we make sure that people are kind of taken in under our wing, they're cared for. And you can build that sort of supportive culture right into your curriculum and how you're running that program. So some things that always help things sell better is having urgency. That's usually a deadline, having scarcity. That could be a limited number of spots. I'm more of a deadline person than a limited amount of spots, because I try to build everything so that it can have unlimited people in it. However, if you're selling something that's direct access to you, at some point there should be a cap, right? You can't just give unlimited amounts of yourself out forever, because at some point you're going to burn out. And I also want you to build for consistency and the long-term game of not burning yourself out and not hating your business. We've got to keep some boundaries up as well. If they have direct access to you, you got to have some rules for yourself too, where you can't just have unlimited. So the things that I try to add to offers to be able to check some of those urgency and scarcity psychological boxes that really do get people to take action, gets them off the fence, gets them moving forward without being, schmarmy and dishonest about it. Here's some ways to do that. So if you use the tech and the tools that we talked about a little bit, where, it uses like cookies, not the like edible cookies, but tech cookies, uses IP addresses. It can track that user in their browser and how they're going through the funnel and lock them out of the page that has the best price. That's one of the easiest ways to do it with the Evergreen type of launches is having fast action pricing that truly does expire. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember the days of internet marketing where it was like, the timer is going to count down, but you could refresh the page and like the timer would go back to 15 minutes and it could get down to 1 minute. You'd refresh it, pop back to 15 minutes. You're like, I could sit here all day and just refresh the page and be able to buy this offer anytime I wanted. I think people are a lot more savvy than that. So our tools have also gotten a lot more sophisticated, where they do use some of the behind the scenes tracking, where you can't just put in a different email address and get the offer again. It's able to recognize, if they have cookies turned on or IP tracking, it can use some of the more sophisticated tech tools to actually lock someone out of the lowest pricing. So you can genuinely say, I mean, I've even said this in my emails of like, hey, I use pretty sophisticated tech where this is the best price that you're going to see. I am going to lock you out because I know that giving you a deadline is going to help you take action faster than just leaving this open all the time. Like I have been transparent in my messaging of even saying it that way of like, I'm a marketer. I know how this works. I know what's going to encourage you to take action for yourself beyond just wanting it. So for that reason, I use these tools. Okay, so then other things that you can do beside just fast action pricing are different types of expiring bonuses. So I will often have different bonuses that I've come up with. I've done things like even funnel builds inside of a webinar of like, if you buy it today on this training right now, we'll build you a funnel. Could be different. I've also done fast action bonuses of like, you get a call with me or you get a call with a team member. You get this extra training added on if you sign up today. I think some of those like day of bonuses work the best, especially in what I've seen more trending in 2026 compared to other years is that people used to wait until the cart close day to buy. And now I'm seeing, especially with like a live webinar or even Evergreen on the day of, if you have a really good day of expiring bonus, people are going to take action right then. And then the cart close day doesn't convert as well as it used to. It used to be I saw 90% of my sales come in on that cart close day. Now it's the opposite, and I see 90% come in on the day of the training, and then maybe trickle a couple more up to close cart. It just doesn't quite have that same like this is the absolute deadline to buy as it used to. I think if people aren't taking action quickly, they're kind of forgetting about it or they're not as moved by the timers as they used to be. The other thing that can work are the cohorts of if you don't want to use a timer and you don't have expiring bonuses, really pushing the messaging of like, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? If you don't change anything and you don't jump in with this cohort, a month from now, you're going to be in the same place. You're going to get another bad grade. You're going to continue questioning if your kid should be in school. Like you're going to just keep living the same day that you're living every single day until you make a decision to make a change. So really pushing the messaging of like, this is why you need to take action, because otherwise you're going to be in the same place next week, next month, a year from now. So that cohort clock of like, don't miss out the opportunity of getting to jump in this month with this cohort. We kick off on Monday. That's something that I'll also do for sales is like, if there is some type of one-on-one call or something like that, I'll say, I have a call open on Friday. If you like, I keep slots on my calendar open specifically to be able to say like, hey, I've got a spot on Friday. If you want to grab that spot, we can get you signed up today and then you can grab that last spot. There's just some things like that that can help people commit and take action. The fourth thing is stepped pricing. So this is what I do on when I sell sprints sometimes where it's like a 6-week sprint. I would do the first fast action day at $297. On Thursday, it would go up to $397. And on Friday, it would be $497 because I liked being able to see people buy every single day. And this was more in like the wait till the last minute type signups. I would get unmotivated. What was happening is like, if people weren't buying on the day it opened, I would get unmotivated. I would fall off and not even send like the cart close email. And because I'm like, well,
Can I
nobody
get the
wants
code
this
for your restroom?
anyway, and I wouldn't fully commit to launch.
127 pound.
But when I did this stepped pricing, I saw a ton of sales come in on the first day, more on the second day, and even some on that last day because I didn't want to miss out. So I was like feeding my own momentum of like, okay, people are buying. They're not waiting until the last minute, and it kept me showing up and promoting what it was that I was selling. So this is what step pricing can look like. It makes waiting feel like it's expensive. So if there's a fast action window where if you buy it in the next 6 hours, you get it for $497. If you buy it in the next week, it's going to be $597. There could be even months in between the pricing too, if you want to increase it. So kind of how the circuit works too, where if you send emails of like, hey, enrollment period's open again for the next 4 days, you can get this for $697, and then the price is increasing. One of the biggest launches that I ever did, or one of the biggest sales days that I ever had in my business was because the price was going up. Like I've never seen something drive traffic or sales as much as like, hey, we're doubling the price on this program. next time we open the doors. That was like one of the biggest launch periods that I had, or one of the biggest, I should say, webinar weeks, because that's when I was doing it weekly. It was, hey, this price is doubling. This is the last time you're going to see this at, X amount, and it's going to be more the next time. So that's another way to do it. Price increases are highly motivating. Think about all the coupons that we get from the different, remember the flyers that were like in the newspaper? Like there were always sales and it said like these prices expire on, within 7 days. That works really well with online business as well. So other things that you can do, make sure that you're anchoring with the value of the total value of what the program is. I always try to make the value on the page that's mentioned. I always try to make it at least 10 to 15 times more what I'm selling it for. So if the program itself, say the program is selling for $297, when I show total value, I want it to be $2,970. So if I have a stack and it's like, you get the community, the value of the community is, $500. You get the coaching calls, the value of the coaching calls is $1,000. So I'll like price it so that if I were to add each one of those things up individually, the total value is 2,970. Then I put a slash through it on the sales page, and today only you get it for $297. But you want to make sure that it's real value. Like you could argue, like, yes, that is worth $1,000. You don't want to just make up arbitrary numbers and say like, oh, the value is, $20 million for this community and these coaching calls. It's got to feel like you could sell it for that
Sign
price.
that you don't know.
Sell it on its own. Otherwise, it can just feel, inflated, and people are like, yeah, right, that's not how this is actually working. The other thing that really helps is offering payment plans. So monthly plans make enrollment an easy yes. So if you can split it into even 12 months, that can be a really economical rate for a lot of people. Statistically, 70% of payment plans will complete.
That would be
30% of
uncomfortable.
them
Please,
will
God,
drop off,
somebody,
or payments will
somebody put
fail.
me
You
out.
can't end up getting back in front of the person so that they pay.
He can't
That
tell
can
you if
be
you're
challenging
uncomfortable.
too. I can mute here. I can't hear you guys for some reason, so I couldn't even hear that. Let me make sure my speakers are on in case anybody does want to say something at some point. So Katie says, do you recommend offering your own payment plans or encouraging buyers to use Klarna or Afterpay? I think Klarna or Afterpay is a great option because then you're getting paid right away. You're not acting as the bank. You're not trying to, front their payment. I don't mind as much because I like stacking reoccurring revenue. I don't mind like doing the work once and then seeing, 287 a month come in for the next 12 months. Sometimes they do drop off and I can't collect it, but I still I like the reoccurring revenue. Just for, I don't know, the sake of having that not guaranteed, but knowing that some portion of that is going to come in no matter what. So either way, I think I think a lot of people use different softwares like that, even as buyers. So it makes it easier because they're not committing to their credit card, or they're just, I don't know. It's a different psychology too, that I think a lot of people, even when they're like buying jeans, are using Afterpay. So I think that if you can work that out with your payment provider, and I think it's changed, but some of those don't approve coaching businesses or online businesses to be able to use Afterpay. But I think it might be a little bit different now. I know there was a time period where I applied to be able to use some of that. I think it was probably like 2 or 3 years ago, and I was not approved because I was an online business. But I think now it works better in sync with like Stripe or something like that too. Other things that you can do as kind of a expiring bonus or a special act or special fast action bonus is offer an extended payment plan. Like something that people will do is sell the full pay first, and that's what they pitch. And then after a couple days in the email sequence, it's like, hey, real quick before we close, we've gotten feedback that this price is too much. We created a brand new payment plan. It's now a 12 pay instead of just the single payment. You can add that right into your email automation and plan that in advance. Other things that you can decide in advance are you going to have a guarantee? If you know there's a money back guarantee on the program, or like a fast action guarantee, that can help increase conversions, especially when it's evergreen. One of the strongest guarantees that I ever created was that people could stay in the program until they made their money back. So it was, If they wanted to be in there for 18 months, they could wait 18 months and like keep working towards being able to make money from what it was that they were creating. The challenge with offering some guarantees like that is there's not a lot of skin in the game. So people are like, well, I don't actually have to show up for this because I can stay in as long as I want. Like I can not even try. And even if I haven't made my money back, I can keep coming to the coaching calls. But, human logic means that then they're not doing things or they're not taking action. We also like a deadline to take action and to make sure we've got a reason to finish our funnel or a reason to get it up and running. If there is a limited time period, I think it does encourage people to actually use the program and get logged in and take action. So you can kind of think about that of like, do you want to be available at any time, knowing people may not act as quickly, or do you want to make sure that they're like following a schedule and you've got deadlines for them built into the program if it is limited to 12 weeks or something like that. You can also sometimes you can add a grace period of like you can get into a program, you can see if you like it. If it's not a good fit, you can cancel or you can refund. Some people will build that into their offers. Other things you can do are doing like a one-time reopen if you're not going to do, like more of the circuit style where you've planned 4 reopenings through the year and you've got all the emails written and scheduled to show them that it's reopening. You can also maybe anybody who signed up to watch the webinar but didn't end up watching, or somebody, whether it's Evergreen or live, you could send them emails and it's like, hey, looks like it wasn't the right fit. We've got a special, maybe it's a slightly different offer. It's something different that you created. Maybe it's a different bonus or a different stack that you're putting into that offer of everything that they get that's included. And maybe you open it up a little bit later and say, for a limited time, you can get this program for this price, and then you reclose it again. Other things that you want to make sure that you're doing is if you have a team, making sure that your team is testing the whole funnel as a customer. They're signing up, they're reading all the emails, clicking on all the links. Because when it is evergreen, kind of like Katie was saying, there's a lot of places where things can fall off, like links in your emails can be broken. Timers can be sending them to expired pages if you're not actually going through it as a human. So that's something to make sure that you're testing as well, because when it is evergreen, there's a lot more things that could be just existing and broken and you don't even know about it. Like I was talking to a friend one time where her conversion rates on her Evergreen webinar completely tanked, and she's like, it was working just fine the day before and now it's been a week and a half without any sales and I don't know why. And then she went and she checked. Sure enough, something weird had happened to her domain, and the page that she was sending them to watch the training was just giving them a 404 error. So they weren't even actually seeing the training, so they couldn't buy the program. And sometimes those things can happen. So make sure that if you have Evergreen, maybe set yourself up either quarterly or monthly to go through it, to check all your links, make sure nothing's broken. And if it is consistently working and then all of a sudden it stops, like that's usually going to be a tech issue or something broke inside of the funnel, and you can go check that out as well. So one thing we're going to talk about is if you plan out what your offer is, you can put it in the chat if you want to share, if you want feedback, but figure out what's your program name, what's the price idea that you have, like what do you want to sell it for? Are you going to include a payment plan? You can put this in the workbook too if you don't want to put it in the chat. Are you going to be offering a weekly heartbeat, like a connection point with your audience, a coaching call, office hours? Is there a day and time that will work best for you consistently? I run my weekly call in the Tiny Offer Lab program, or now in the school group. I've run that call every single week for 400 weeks. So like it just is on my calendar. If I go on vacation, sometimes I'll delete it or I'll bring in a guest coach, but I know no matter what I'm scheduling, like I have that day and time in my calendar and I just don't mess with it. And I know I just plan around it and it's been there and it'll keep being there. And, that's like my cadence of getting to touch base with anybody who's in the program, see how things are going. And, it's not as some people are like, I would never want to be beholden to a schedule like that. But you know what? I'm going to be working during the week anyway. So it's really not that much different than just a reoccurring call on my calendar. Okay, so other things that you can think about is the enrollment week after somebody buys. Make sure you've got that welcome email figured out, give them a quick win, think about, what would you want them to do when they're first coming into the program, and then sending a check-in at a minimum of like, hey, did you get logged in? Do you know when the calls are? Do you know how to ask questions? Do you, have you figured out your plan for going through the program? If you are, say somebody like Katie, who helps people with executive function, you could take that up a notch. You can say, like, my recommendations based on everyone I've coached is that they put 20-minute slots on their calendar right now, like put in, I'm going to watch module 1, I'm going to watch module 2, like add it to your schedule, block time right now to go through the program. Otherwise, you might forget. So you can make that as simpler as in depth as you want. Other things to think about with the real deadline that we talked about, are you going to use an expiring bonus? Are you going to close the cart after X amount of days? Or are you going to increase the price? Those are other factors that you can think about and write down. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is the actual, Katie says, question about the weekly heartbeat call. I offer monthly calls for a full year. Do you think these calls are too infrequent? That's a good question, but it also, I think it varies depending on your price point too. Like, I wouldn't want with the fast action price, and they get it for a full year. You could watch and see like how many people are showing up to the calls, and maybe see, do they show up more frequently right after they buy and then kind of drop off? If they had more calls, would they continue showing up? Your audience is super busy too. So, and you have it kind of evergreen in a way with the calls too, where they can submit and it's a podcast, right? So I think the way that you're doing it is fine. I think it depends, A, on price, and B, on audience, and C, most importantly, what you want to do and how you like to show up. Nervous system management also we talked about. All right, so talking about the webinar, whether you're doing it evergreen or whether you're doing it live, the structure of the webinar is pretty similar. What we're going to talk about is the psychology behind how they're put together and why they are, in the order that they're in, or kind of just the structure of the timing of building a webinar. The things that get people to finally buy and finally take action is not over teaching. If I ever, that's usually the first question I ask people when they're like, oh, I've done webinars before and they never convert, or people don't buy from my webinars. It's usually an issue of giving too much value on the webinar. And then they're like, cool, thanks for all the information. I'm going to go implement everything that I learned from you. And, I'm good. I don't need the program. So what we usually talk about, and my friend Colin Boyd teaches this as, like, if you start getting into steps, like if you're teaching it as step 1, step 2, step 3, that's kind of your first signal that you've gotten too deep into the teaching side, and you need to pull back a little bit and teach more on theory or more on belief shifting than step-by-step trainings. So the belief shift is the number one thing that you'll hear taught when people are talking about webinars. And it's the thing that is going to give them hope. I just did a podcast about selling hope, and I think that it was a big aha moment for me. And so go listen to that if you haven't yet, because it taught me to think about things differently and how I'm positioning what it is that I'm selling, or, like how I'm thinking about belief shifting in general. So we want to make sure that, oh, good, Alana. Yeah, it hit home for me too. That's why I needed to record a podcast about it, because it was a shift that I needed to, be okay with selling hope, knowing that's ultimately what a lot of people need. So the belief shift of, like, what is going to feel possible for someone after watching your training that didn't feel possible before they watched the training. So what is the belief of, they felt like A before they watched the training, after watching the training, they believe that B is possible for them. So that's, Russell Brunson used to call this an epiphany bridge, where you need to, like, walk them through a transition where, through the stories that you're telling, or through the customer examples that you're sharing, or even just the light bulb moments that you're giving them on the training are based on these beliefs of, like, I thought my kid was just destined to not be good at school, but it's actually because they don't have the right structure to how they're setting up their interaction with their homework, or, like studying for their tests or whatever. So something different is going to feel like it's possible for them than it did when they first signed up for the training. Other things to make sure that you're including in the structure of your webinar is relatable proof. So stories from people who share their doubts. I was here and then I got coaching from Allie, and now this is what's possible. This is what I've built. But the key is to make it relatable, right? Like I've had a few clients who launched tiny offers at the exact right time in their business, and all these other factors were perfect for them, and they built $1 million businesses on the back of these tiny offers. When I shifted, I was like, ooh, I have $5 million case studies now, guys. Like, I'm going to talk about these $1 million case studies on my webinar. When I started only talking about those customers, my conversion rates dropped, because you know how many people believe that they can have $1 million businesses? A lot less than people who believe that they want to make 10K a month, 20K a month, 30K a month, even 5K a month. Like, those people are far more prevalent in my webinar attendees. And when I'm talking too much about, like, Katie built $1 million business and like all these examples, people were like, good for them, but that's not possible for me. So it has to be relatable before anything else. It's got to match who's on the webinar, which means like the title of the webinar, the teaching points in the webinar, or the belief shifting points in the webinar, the customer stories that you're telling. All of that needs to be speaking to the same type of avatar, to the same person that's on your email list. Because if my training was promised as like, this is how you scale your ads to be able to run $1 million business based on low ticket, then I could share those $1 million stories. But when it's like, create a tiny offer so that you can make your first $27 sale online, that's going to be a much different person signing up for the second webinar versus the first webinar. And if the customer stories don't relate to them, or they're not relatable to them, then it doesn't matter. Then they're like, okay, whatever, this chick is crazy. That's not possible for me. You got to make sure that you're sharing stories that show the same starting point, that show the same doubts that they're experiencing. If you have different examples of knowing what your avatars look like say you're in the fitness industry and you're helping people who are recovering after a C-section to get their abs back, or to get their pelvic floor aligned, or something like that. Like, you want to make sure that you're showing different stories of like, this is my first baby, this is my fifth baby, I work full time, I sit at a desk all day. Like, you want to make sure you're pulling in examples that are exactly what your customers are thinking. Like, okay, cool for them, but Frank Kern used to call these the yeah buts. So like, if somebody's watching your webinar and they're like, yeah, but, and they're like explaining to themselves why your offer is never going to work for them, why you're crazy, why your stories are made up. Like, you have to make sure that you're speaking to the people that have the, the negative beliefs, or have the yeah buts as they're watching your training. No matter what, you have to speak to those people and give them examples of why it's possible for them to get the results that you're talking about that are relatable to where they're at. Then you always want to include a real deadline, a genuine reason to decide today. I think now, trust recession, we hear a lot about that phrase right now, how we're in a trust recession and people aren't buying the way that they used to. I think the messaging is even more important now, of like making sure that you're talking about, if you don't take action now, if you keep waiting, if you're, not doing what you know is the next step, or, it's got to be more trust focused, not just like fake deadline, urgency, scarcity, being really pushy, trying to get people to make a decision. Has to be more of an emotional close than it ever has been, and getting them to connect to why now is the time to take action, why it's important that they, invest in this, why they trust you. The emotional side of it, like, there's always been logical buyers and emotional buyers, and you had to kind of speak to both. But I think the pendulum has swung more towards emotional buying. So we really have to make sure that's included and promoted in your webinar, that you're speaking to the emotional side. Because, trust recession, emotions are high, trust is at an all-time low. We got to make sure that piece is included. Safety is another really important piece. Speaking of trust recession, making sure that there's a guarantee, making sure that the risk is survivable in some way, that they know it is what you say it's going to be, that they're okay to get in there, look around, make sure that it's legit. I mean, I can't tell you how many times people tell me, like, I spent thousands of dollars on a coaching program and it wasn't even close to what they said it was going to be. And then I had a contract and I couldn't get out of it and I got totally ripped off. Like, I hear stories like that probably every single day. And we have to make sure that, knowing our audience has been there, that they still want to make a change, they didn't get the result that they wanted. They're on, the back end of just having gone through that kind of experience. You want to make sure that the risk feels like it's going to be survivable. It's not going to be another like regret that they would have of this isn't what it said it was going to be, and I spent all this money and now I'm stuck. We don't want that. So the other thing is, which you wouldn't believe how often people don't make it really clear what the call to action is, but you want to have one call to action on the page, or you want to give them one job to do after watching that training. The only way around this that might also work if you give them two options is like, hey, if you're ready and this is for you, you can go to the link you can buy right now, make sure that you get the fast action bonus. But if you're someone that's like, is this going to work in my niche? Is this going to work for my kid? Is this going to work for my current health scenario or question that I have? You can also book a call with me or with my team, and we'll make sure all those questions are answered. That's the only time you can have two different calls to action, because you're kind of saying like, buy now with this button, book a call if you have questions. But I would encourage trying to pick one, like try to figure out which one is going to work for your audience. It's either go to this link right now, buy. Even having too many different payment options, or, Katie, we've talked about having a premium versus a higher ticket version. Any of those things can add just the right amount of friction where people are like, ooh, I need to think about it. Like, do I want premium or do I want standard? I don't know which one to choose, so I'm going to go think about it. And then they're going to leave and they might forget that they were thinking about it, or, they missed the deadline and then they're just gone. So I think anytime you can pick your favorite offer, you can give them only the thing that you really want them to buy. And maybe later in the sequence, like if you come back and you open the cart again for them with a little bit different offer, or you give a different payment plan or something like that, you can come back and give them a different call to action. But on the webinar, I would certainly, if you can, try to get yourself to only give them one call to action at that time. Also, the importance of going out and mining your buyer's language first before you build anything. If you can get on calls with your people, if you can, even if it's like a free coaching call, I still do this all the time where I'll give people a 20-minute value ladder call or something like that, because I want to see what they're saying, what they're thinking. And AI makes this so much more useful than it used to, because you can take transcripts of all those calls. You can put them into, like a custom GPT or a skill, or you can upload it all to Claude and use that to write your sales pages, or say, pull my client's exact wording, like don't change it, don't tweak it, don't AIify it, like use my exact customers' phrases and sentences in my emails, in my sales page copy. I have a skill that I can give you guys that I created in Claude that creates my webinar presentations for me, or helps map them out, at least the first draft. And it says that in there, like, make sure you're referencing these surveys or these call transcripts. And I've even gone as far as hooking up Fathom to my Claude. Like, I've been able to connect the two or integrate the two. So I can say, even when I'm looking for podcast ideas, I can say, look at my last 10 coaching calls that I ran, look at the transcripts, see if you can find any through points or any like consistent or questions that are asked frequently, and give me a list of topic ideas for upcoming podcasts. But you can do that too and figure out, what is my webinar hook? What's the title? What am I actually teaching on this webinar? And then it just gives you a little bit, it's a much easier place to start than that blank page trying to figure out what your webinar should be. So you can ask buyers, what made you buy and what almost stopped you. If someone almost bought, but they didn't buy, you can say, like, what is the reason that you passed? And this is one of those, follow-up surveys that you can send via email too, that, why didn't you buy? And for the not yet buyers, or even for my tiny offer buyers, I'll ask them, like, what is the most frustrating thing about your business right now? What do you wish you had a magic wand that you could solve? Like, if you could fix anything in your business easily, like, what would that thing be? And you'll get a ton of information about tools that they wish existed, or different, pieces of the puzzle that they haven't solved yet that you can kind of come in and be able to fix for them. The title formula that I use most frequently is get and the specific result that they want without the thing that they dread. I've heard people also say, like, get the yum without the yuck. Like, if you think about what is the thing they really want and the thing that they really don't want, and then sometimes I'll add another section to the title that's like, even if XYZ. So, how to enroll clients every week without launching sales calls or a big audience, even if you hate ads, you don't want to be on social media, and you've never sold anything online before. Like when you put it in that formula, it shows the desire, the dread, and those are things that you're pulling from those research calls. So you know what they don't like, you know what they really want, you know what they would fix if they had a magic wand, and you take those and you kind of plug and play them into the title of your webinar, and then that's going to be the hook that gets people to register. So I always follow these 3 pillars, or these types of pillars. So the first thing that you want to do is figure out the myth. So like, what is the thing that's keeping them stuck? Well, they might think, my kid just has to go to public school. That's the only option. Or my kid is going to be a bad student. They're never going to understand how to study. Their brain just doesn't work that way. So like, what is the thing that is keeping them stuck? That belief that they're just, this is what it is, and that's never going to change. But then the next step of that is showing them how it could work instead. Like if they only knew how to do X thing, it could be a totally different story for them. And then the story is what's going to make that truth land for them and be memorable. I mean, think about all the parables that we have and all the stories, and we remember stories way more than just straight facts. Like we connect emotionally to stories, and that's why they're memorable. And then the edge is why your way is going to work for them specifically, and how, your framework, method, blueprint, those types of words, why that's going to be the fix. Even though they previously thought there wasn't a solution, the story shows that it's possible. And then this is why it works. This is why it was a repeatable process, and why it works for your clients, or something like that. So I'll usually in my trainings, and maybe I say this, what I usually will do is try to come up with 3 different things that are the beliefs that they have. So it could be, and Russell Brunson teaches this as like an internal belief, an external belief, and a belief about what it is that you're selling. He calls that like the vehicle belief. So the internal belief is like, I'm not good enough. I'm not techie. I don't know. It's usually some type of good enoughness, right? Like I don't know enough. It's like I'm not enough in some facet of my life. That's usually the internal belief that you want to overcome, of like, I couldn't manage homeschooling my kids. I don't think I know how to support my kid through school, or whatever. I'm using examples of the people that I can see. So maybe I should like expand this so I can see more of you. But so then you try to figure out what the internal belief is that they have. And then external belief is usually things. Okay, sounds good, Alana. External is like things around them that they feel like are out of their control. Like the school system is what's at fault. Like I can't grow a business because I live in a small town. I don't understand marketing. The tech is beyond something that I can understand. It's like kind of placing the blame outside of themselves, because we've already covered like, actually you are enough, and this is why you're enough, and here's how my clients became enough, because they just made this small shift. And then the next one is, this is why you can fix this external problem. It doesn't matter that you live in a small town. It doesn't matter that, public school is the only option. It doesn't matter, XYZ, whatever it is, something that's outside of themselves. And then the third belief that or the third pillar that I overcome inside of webinars is something that they believe about your solution that you need to overcome, of like, well, I've tried to lose weight with keto and it didn't work for me. But if you're selling a keto program, you're going to teach them why keto actually is the best solution, or why, homeschooling is the best solution, or why whatever your solution is for them, that's where you're arguing that, your vehicle or your solution is the one that they need. And you're going to show the truth about it. You're going to tell them a story about it, and you're going to show like your framework of how you teach it, or why that one specifically works. So the pillar is usually, for example, of like, you need a huge audience before you can sell a program. And I would say, no, you just need a tiny offer to bring in new people that then will, enroll in your higher ticket programs. A tiny list of buyers can out earn a big list of fans. So that's kind of me overcoming a myth that a lot of people believe, of like, oh, I have to do all this organic content before I can grow a business online. Actually, you just need one clear entry point, even if it's tiny, that you can then ascend into your next thing. The next thing that I wanted to answer on this training, because Jennifer in school asked this question. So she was asking about teaching mindset or skills. And we kind of talked about this a little bit, but I would say teaching around the pillars, or teaching around beliefs, is kind of more mindset than actual skills. on these workshops, I'm not selling you guys anything at the end, so I don't need to transform any beliefs, right? Like I'm only teaching, I am giving the steps. We are going, A through Z in these trainings, but I'm not trying to pitch and make you believe something different so that my offer makes sense at the end because you're already in it. So that's a little bit different where I'm teaching like a workshop versus a training that is trying to convince of, the sale at the end of you're like positioning all these things during the training. If you're selling a community, then something in your training needs to shift the belief like, oh, community is really what I've been missing. What this person's selling at the end has community. Of course, I need to buy it because she just showed me that community is, a belief. The belief was that community is a big piece of the puzzle. You kind of like are seeding the things that are in your offer inside of the beliefs and the mindset shifts that you're offering to. So the pillars are going to change what feels possible. And then you're wrapping it around like this solution that's also in the pitch that you're making at the end. So they're going to feel like your method works too. So you're like making all these pieces work together based on what it is that you're selling. That's why we talked about the offer first. I always make sure that you know exactly what it is, is it community? Is it coaching? You know exactly what's in the offer before you build the webinar because you want each thing to point back to the belief that you're giving them inside of the training. So if the program is helping them build skills, we want to make sure that people aren't thinking they're getting everything they need from that training and then they can go implement it themselves. So if you're teaching like the what and the why, then the how is inside of the program, especially with this age of AI. Like I've had friends who put on 5-day challenges, put on webinars, people transcribed it or they took the replay and they uploaded it to an AI tool and said, okay, teach me if they teach too much, then it's like, okay, show me my next implementation steps or act like you're a coach for this program. And then they just use AI to use what you just taught them on the webinar. And then they don't need what you just sold. We have to make sure that if you're just teaching them the what and the how is inside the program, there are ways to do it where what you're putting in the program can't be replaced by AI either. So that's like a whole new piece that we have to think about in 2026 with AI being a thing. So the training, what I usually try to stick with, is if it's an on-demand training, trying to teach it or keep it around 45 to 60 minutes. Usually, I would say the first 2/3 of the training is going to be based on the belief shifting and the stories and stuff like that. And the last third is going to be the pitch. So if I'm doing an hour-long training, I want to make sure I'm hitting the pitch at 40 minutes. So I have 20 minutes of pitching and building up what's in the program. And there is kind of a cadence to like showing the bonuses one at a time and explaining like in this bonus, the value of this bonus is, $200 and you get this special training and this is what it looks like. Here's how it's going to help you. So it's kind of like an infomercial if you've ever watched that of like, but wait, there's more. You also get this bonus and here's how we're going to add it in and here's how you're going to use it. That's how you can stretch the pitch out to be, a third of the training that you're putting on. I think that's what where a lot of people go wrong is they teach for 55 minutes and then it's like, oh, and by the way, like I also have this program, you can join it. Here's the link. And like the pitch is 5 minutes of the 60 minutes. You've really got to build up the value and you're going to be pitching for a lot longer than you think you should be. But that's what has worked the best for these trainings. Alana said, can it be shorter if you have an audience that you think wouldn't be able to stick around for 45 to 60 minutes? Yeah, I think you can you could definitely start with 30, say it's even a 30-minute training. It gets a little bit harder to get all of the belief shifting needed in just a quick 30 minutes, but it is possible. I think if your training can keep people engaged, you could probably push it out closer to 45 minutes. Because maybe it's something that you tell them, like you can listen to this while you're folding laundry or whatever. Maybe you design it in a way where they're doing other stuff anyway, but you're keeping the information really interesting for them, so they're staying engaged with it, even if they're like listening while they're driving or something. Obviously, it's going to convert more if they're sitting at a computer and they're watching the video, but I think depending on your audience, you might know that that's not as realistic for them, that they're going to have a 60-minute block to just sit there. So you could think about that when you're planning the content and when you're thinking about your follow-up sequence, how you're getting them to engage with it, even if they're doing something else. For live, you can usually get a little bit more time in. When I was at peak selling of my coaching program, my webinar would sometimes be 2.5 hours at a time. But I would do the belief shifting for about 90 minutes, and then the Q&A, like people would not stop asking questions. I'd stay as long as I needed to on the Q&A. That was some feedback I got really early on, was answer questions for as long as you can, because that's going to help get anybody off the fence. Like the longer you stay, the longer people are going to, change, like be convinced while you're doing Q&A, and then they'll end up joining. And then if you're doing the challenge model, it would be 30 to 60 minutes per challenge day, and you want to open enrollment around day 4. So with the first 15 minutes, you usually break it down like this. You're going to talk about what they're going to learn from the training. You're going to talk about the promise. You're going to set the clock of like, okay, we're going to talk about this for 15 minutes. And then after that, you're kind of showing them what they want to stick around for, and make sure they know that there are important things coming in the training. They don't want to leave, especially in that Evergreen training. You want to convince them that it's really worth their time. Some people will kind of seed like, you don't want to miss what I talk about in the third section of the training, because that's been the most impactful for my clients. So you kind of tease why they want to stay and not leave. That can be really helpful. If you show your face, especially Evergreen, that's going to be help it convert at higher rates. I've seen a lot of trainings where they're like, I don't like being on camera, or I get distracted, I'm going to just turn off my camera. I think that hurts the conversion rates. I think if you are doing it Evergreen, there are ways that you can say your first time you record it, you're reading off of a script. Maybe you don't have your face on it. Like you're just getting used to it. You can be off camera if you really need to be reading in the script that you wrote for the webinar. I think that's fine. But at some point, it's going to be better to have that script memorized or have a teleprompter when you're recording your Evergreen webinar, so that you can feel more natural and you can be on camera, because when people see you, they just build trust a little bit differently. And then you want to make sure that you state who this is for. You want to make sure that you're giving hope for people that are new. You want to offer forgiveness to people that are struggling. That's why you hear this line a lot in marketing, where it's like, it's not your fault if you've tried this before. It's not your fault if you've bought other programs. That whole like, it's not your fault thing is to release any shame or any belief in around this will never work for me, because we want people to be in a state where they can be open-minded to hear another solution, instead of just being shut down of like, I'm hopeless. This is never going to work for me. It's good for everybody else, but it won't work for me. That's why marketers say that, of like, if you've struggled with this before and it didn't work for you, it's not your fault. It's the program was designed wrong. It was set up to make you fail. Even in ads, you see this of like, if you're a woman in perimenopause and you're not losing weight, it's not your fault. It's your hormones, or it's because other programs aren't designed to be able to help you at this stage of life. Like they're always trying to like take that stress off of you and blame it on something else, so that you're open to another solution or open to a new option. And then you want to make sure that you're validating any fear that they have, and you're starting to paint the transformation, or show them the hope, show them the dream of what it could look like if they knew how to implement your solution, or if they, went through with the training that you have for them that's going to change their lives. That's painting that picture of hope for them. Then in this arc of building credibility, usually if you can show some type of transformation story for you of like, this is where I started. It's a lot easier in business. That's why we see a lot of like before and after feast, not feast and famine, but like, my business was a disaster until I discovered the tiny offer method, and that changed everything, right? That whole realization, recalibration, and now what it looks like for me. I think a lot of us in this industry, we have in this like information expert industry, we have some variation of that, of like, where were you when you discovered the thing that you're selling? What helped you have the aha moments? It could be, I worked with 200 students and I saw the same pattern reemerging, or I worked in a gym and I saw everybody struggling with the same thing, or, I was a marriage counselor and I saw I saw this pattern happen, and it finally clicked that it wasn't X, it was Y that people needed. And then you recalibrate, you show how you started testing it out. If If it was more of like not a lived story, then you can share what you saw with your clients all going through the same thing. If it was something you've always naturally been good at and then you taught other people how to do it, it's going to be harder to show like your own before and after. So that's when you can bring in more client stories. So client stories are using usually the same format, whether it's in your webinar or it's in your email. So if you can create a bank in Google Doc of different client stories that you have, that's going to make it way easier to find testimonials for your sales pages, write email stories around those, put them in your webinar, kind of have like your library of different stories that you can tell. It's going to make it way easier for you to create all of the content that goes into these in the long run. So after you are done with the teaching, you share the stories, the transformation arcs, then you go into talking about enrolling into the program. So the bridge is usually super awkward for a lot of people where it's like, um, option one is to continue doing it yourself. And option two is to enroll in my program and get the result where I hold your hand doing it. There's a handful of different sentences that you can go that kind of bridge from teaching to selling, because that's where like watching people do webinars, that's where I see people kind of stumble the most. Is they might teach and be really laid back and fun, and then they know they're in the pitch and like their tone changes, their cadence of talking changes, like you can tell that they're nervous, and like it's like two different webinars, right? Is what it feels like, or two different sections. So you want to make it feel like it's natural. You want to feel comfortable. And one of the easiest ways, you can probably ask AI to give you some one-liners to go from teaching to then pitching or telling them about the offer. There's a few different ways where you can be like, hey, so if you're interested in learning how I work with clients, like drop a 1 in the chat. There's a few things that you can say where you can kind of give yourself a breath. And if it's evergreen, you're not going to be saying put a 1 in the chat. So there's going to be different one-liners where you kind of show people like the teaching section is over, and now we're going to talk about how I can personally help you. You don't want to say it like that, but there are ways to do it. Then you're going to start dropping the stack. So when I say a stack, it's every element that's in the training, things like community. This is in the workbook too, of like the stack of what you can decide to put in your program or not. Core curriculum, community calls, different bonuses that you're including, different tools that you're giving them. There's a lot of different pieces that you can add to the offers, and that's what you're putting in the stack. That's where you'd say like this value is worth $97, and here's how it benefits you in the long run. So you start piecing all of that together, and then you say the total value, and you're like, the total value of everything in this program is $10,000. The standard price is $8,000, but because you've been on this live training with me, I want to offer it at a special price that you can just get only today or only until Friday, and it's $5,000. So there is a kind of a cadence, and I can give you guys a template if that would be easier too, but there's a cadence usually to how this works best. So like, here's the total value, here's what I could sell it for, but here's what I'm actually selling it for as part of this training. And then you give them after you tell them what is possible, you say, with this program, you're going to be a great student, you're going to master school, you're going to have a plan, you're going to know how to get the result. Or if you don't jump into this program, maybe you keep waiting, maybe it's another school year that passes, or maybe things never change. And then you show them what it would look like without your training, and then drop the guarantee of like, if you join, you get 2 weeks in the program where you can look around. If you decide that it's not for you, you can get your money back. Or maybe there's the performance guarantee of like, if you don't make your money back in X period, you can be in it forever. If you don't get an A on your next test, I'll give you a one-on-one call to help you get on track and figure out what you're missing. Like, there's a lot of different creative ways to position a guarantee based on what you know about your audience, what you know they're afraid of. And I always try to make the price feel small twice. So if you have the stacked value versus the price, if you can say, here's the value of everything that's included. And then if you can also add real world math into the program of like, if you were to pay for a tutor, it's going to be $197 every single session. But if you implement this program and you learn how to do it on your own, you're going to actually be saving X amount. Like, there's a lot of things, in the health industry that you can do, like, if you hire a nutritionist, if you hire a personal trainer, if you hire, get DEXA scans or whatever, you like think of all the things they might be spending money on instead, and say, this program is going to teach you how to fix the problem so you either don't have to keep paying for that stuff, or you won't need it in the long run, and you can kind of offset the price in their minds of like, well, of course I would sign up for this because I'm going to be saving money. A way that I think about this that we see in real life is credit card offers. If you ever open the big credit card offers and it's like a page that keeps unfolding, and it's like you get free access to this airline club, and you get, a special partnership with Uber where you save $20 on your next ride. Like the credit card company is trying to predict what it is that's going to get you to say, oh, wow, if I open this credit card, I'm actually saving money by using this credit card. It's the same type of thing that you want to think about when you're positioning the pricing of your offer and how you're like revealing it on your webinar. Is it's got to feel like they're almost saving money and saving effort and saving time and emotional distress by joining this program, instead of, letting this program or letting the problem continue to linger. So an example of that is if you validate first and inside of those 3 pillars that you're teaching, then you're sweeping the rest after the pitch. And in your FAQs, that's another way to kind of continue overcoming any beliefs that they might need shifted that you didn't do earlier in the training. So after you pitch, you tell the price, and then if you're doing this evergreen, you're obviously not going to have time for Q&A. So you have your pre-decided frequently asked questions, and you can say, based on coaching lots of different people, I know this is what you're probably thinking. And a lot of people often ask, isn't one-on-one coaching better than group coaching? And you could say, you're right, group coaching is different. You'll get coached through challenges you haven't hit yet, and you'll see what other people are struggling with. And, it'll help you more than one-on-one coaching, because you might be struggling with something you didn't even realize you were struggling with until you hear someone else ask that question. So when you're doing it evergreen, you don't want to ignore the FAQ section, but you do want to position it differently of like, you could say, some people pretend that evergreen webinars are live. So they'll say, my team is telling me that someone just asked this question, and you can position it that way. I would rather say, based on my experience, I know you might be wondering this. And then another question I get a lot is this. And you kind of go through more objection busting of questions that you get a lot, that even though you taught your shifts or your belief shifts earlier in the webinar, you want to make sure you're answering some of those last minute questions too. And then to close, you want to recap the stack of everything that they get, the value of all of it, show them the price of what the standard price is, plus what the fast action price would be if they buy that day or that week. Make sure you mention that again at the end. Make sure the deadline is really clear. If you tie to when their access begins, of like, if you sign up by Friday, our cohort is kicking off the following week, or, the next, we'll have a date for you when your cohort is kicking off. And if you're doing it this way, it is good to make sure that people feel like you're being honest with it, because people will see your ads over and over again. If you are advertising, if they're on your email list, they might see you repeating this cycle of opening the cart. So saying, enrollment is going to reopen, but this price might be different, or this offer might be different the next time that I reopen. So if there's something here that you're excited about, or something that you want access to, I can't promise that it's going to be included next time. It might be a completely different offer next time, or a different price the next time this enrollment opens. Then make sure that you show testimonials, different stories, again, ones that are relatable to them, have an FAQ that's included, and then have a warm, simple send off that's really clear on their next steps. So make sure you go to this link to sign up before Friday, because that's when the cart is closing. That's when this pricing or this offer is going to expire. And then it's really clear at the end. So for this part, or like with the workbook that you get, you want to make sure that you've written different title drafts. I think if you can go through at least 10 different ideas, different iterations of that formula that I gave you, of like how to blank without blank, even if blank, write some of those options down for the name of your training, and then figure out the 3 biggest beliefs that people have, or the myths that they're believing, and then what you think is the truth behind that, or what you want them to know is true. Then think of different stories that you have, either from your own life, or client testimonials are usually even more powerful, that shows each pillar or illustrates the shift that that person made related to each myth. And then the other thing to do is try to get on calls with your clients if you can do that too. So those are the things to keep working on. I'm going to keep plugging away because we've got more to go through. The Evergreen funnel build, this is everything that is included in an Evergreen webinar. You want to have an opt-in page. You want to confirm the flow. So if someone's opted in, you want to give them the next steps. You want to remind them how to show up to watch it. So the show up emails, then you have a place to actually show the webinar. So it could be a software that you're using. You could just embed a video on the page as well. The watch page is where they will watch the webinar. And then you're going to have a sales page where they can go buy the program, email, different email stories, email arcs that they're going through, and safety nets where if they don't buy, or if you're, like giving them a different payment plan or a different expiring bonus, those can kind of pull people back in if they don't end up buying. So the opt-in page has only one job. You want to make sure people know how to sign up for the training. You're going to show them what they're going to learn on the training with those 3 pillars promised as different teaser bullets that are on the page. Something about you that gives them proof that you know what you're talking about, who it's for. So showing that hope for beginners, forgiveness for strugglers is a way to think about that again. And then buttons everywhere. So pretty much every scroll depth or so, you can have 3 or 4 different sign up buttons on one registration page. And your benchmark is that you're looking for at least 30% to up to 45% opting in from cold traffic for that training. Things that are often overlooked after opt-in is on that confirmation page, if you can even have them confirm twice that they want your emails, that'll make sure that it lands in their inbox. Other things that you can do is remind them to add it to their calendar, check their email, give them a welcome email that's reminding them what they're going to get from that training. And then you start the clock for letting them know how long. If you're putting a limited time on how long they have to watch that training too for Evergreen, you would want to make sure that's in the email. Other things for the watch page, if you are doing a fast action price, you're going to have 2 different versions of the page where you'll have a fast action version. For Evergreen, you can have a call to action button that shows up at the pitch time, a timer that's tied to their deadline, links to that fast action price where they know where to go to be able to buy at that price. And then if you are going to expire it, then you have to have a different page that you're redirecting to afterwards. So if the fast action price expires, then there's a standard version of the page that is similar, but it has a different price on it. So that you are being legit when you say this page, you can only get this price while this page is live. And then after that, it's going to X price. So some different things that you'll create as part of the email involved with the Evergreen webinar is having your fast action emails. You get the price for the first 5 days after signing up for the webinar. And then if you are going to release it for a higher price, make sure you have that nurturing bridge in between. And then on the following email sequence that you're launching, you're going to open it up for that full price and letting them know like, hey, it looks like you missed the fast action price, but you can still come into the program for a different price. Maybe it's a slightly different offer. The thing to remember is that it might be surprising, but people will buy along the whole timing or the whole timeline. So some people will buy at that fast action price. Some people will buy on the final days for a larger amount. And some people will be on your list for months, and maybe they'll come back in later and they'll buy after they've been thinking about it for a long time. Some people will, hit an emotional trigger in their life where they're like, okay, I'm ready to make this decision. I have a client that has her best sales day for her Evergreen webinar funnel is on Sundays. Like people, they don't want to go to work on Monday. She works with a really specific niche that gets the Sunday scaries, and they want to have a plan to be able to stop working their day job and to be able to do what it is that they're doing on their own. They want to have a private practice for their specialty, and Sunday is her biggest sales day because people get those Sunday scaries, and she sends out the emails specifically around that of like, if you don't want to have another bad Monday morning where your boss is waiting for you and things have changed at work again, make sure that you're learning how to run your own business so that this is not going to be forever. You have an escape plan so you know what to do. Every email in the machine, if you think about the emails that you're going to be writing, you want to have the link, delivery with the deadline in the first sequence. Then you want to have the fast action sequence that has 5 different emails in it. Nurturing bridge, you can have 3 different emails that are possibility proof and the cost of waiting. The sales window, if you're opening at the sign it time, 6 to 8 different emails in that after the Evergreen webinar and the fast action price. And then the safety nets are usually different abandoned cart emails. Could be you missed it, could be the survey that you're sending out so that you can keep collecting information about why people didn't buy, and you can improve your email automations to include some of those objections, overcome those objections a little bit harder, stuff like that. So it's about 20 emails that are you write once and then you build in around your Evergreen webinar. And AI can help you with a lot of those emails, but you always want to make sure that you're writing them from a human perspective too, that you're including the actual words that your audience is saying, because AI will take like the average of all your emails, but what I found is AI written emails kind of miss the depth, miss the flow, like the highs and the lows of an email that is written by a human. So just make sure that you're really reviewing anything that's written by AI with your voice and reading it out loud. It sounds kind of weird, but if you read it out loud and you're like, oh gosh, I would never say that, like that feels really weird or foreign to say out loud, then that's probably a good idea to rewrite that sentence or put it in your own words. These are the 5 emails that are the fast action emails. So a welcome, a value nudge, the belief shifting, like the real risk of staying stuck, stories from students who almost passed but then decided to join. And then the last day, I'll usually send 2 emails, so the morning and the final email. Then the nurturing bridge, you want to make sure that you don't have a call to action in this next email sequence. It's more about reminding them of the possibility, showing them the proof, the fear and the proof, and the cost of waiting. And you want to make sure that you include each of those, and the in between, if you're doing the fast action email sequence and then the standard price sequence as part of your Evergreen funnel, that's the best way that I found to do it. And then when you reopen the enrollment period for a higher price, you want to show that it's open again and kind of a surprise of like, hey, if you miss the fast action, that's okay. You can still jump in and then show them why they should still join even at a higher price. The middle emails are going to be more about objection overcoming, knowing they didn't buy at the cheapest price, right? So we have to keep figuring out what's going to move them to action. Why is now the time to buy? What do they wish was included in the FAQs? Like, what are they still wondering? What hasn't been answered yet? And then in the closing, you're still going to send your last day email in the morning, and then you're in your final hours. Sometimes I'll even send 3 emails on the last day of like, hey, in the morning, this is the last day. Afternoon, this is your last, we're coming up on the final hours. And then in the evening, like, hey, this really is the last chance to enroll for this program. So, the webinar script that you're writing, you should be able to just pull different pieces of your script and put that into the webinar email. So even if somebody doesn't watch the webinar, they could still get those emails and, have their beliefs, the limiting beliefs that they have or the objections that we're trying to overcome. You should be able to do all of that in the email just by taking chunks of your webinar script. And that makes it a little bit easier to be able to get that up and running. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the sales page that's selling your product. There's 17 different sections that I usually include in all of my sales pages. So you want to start with the transformation, the problem, and why you're different in like that top section on the page. You want to make sure you're building trust with your story. You're showing specific client wins. So the more testimonials, the better, I've found. You're presenting the offers. So, introducing the program, the elements of what's in it, all the bonuses of the benefits that are in the next section after that, removing the risk. So having a guarantee. I have a calculator on my current tiny offer page that shows the math of the, what a tiny offer can do for them. It's kind of an interactive piece of the sales page that I think is fun. You could have AI do something for that. And then any objections that you want to overcome. Oops, I'm jumping ahead. And then making sure that it's clear who it's for, and then using the future pace choice of like, without this program, it might look like A. If you do join this program, B is what it could look like. So you're showing even a side-by-side, I think can work really well of pages of like, you might be here, but this is what it could look like if you decide to make the choice. And the workbook has all of the different sections that you kind of map out and see a visual of it in the workbook in the Google Doc and map out some of your ideas on that page. The next thing that you want to include for the Evergreen webinars is these safety nets, where if somebody doesn't buy it in the fast action, they don't buy it with a standard price, you can do abandoned cart, save your spot, respond, let me know why this time didn't work out. This expression that I've heard is like, you want to keep emailing people until. And it's like, until what? Well, okay, until they either unsubscribe or they buy something. Like, don't be afraid to keep following up. Don't be afraid to get in front of people. I had people who would go through one of my Evergreen series or even my weekly webinar, and they were like, I wasn't going to join, but you were just so persistent in your emailing that I finally signed up, and I'm so glad that I did. So that was a reminder of me or to me of like, okay, yeah, I'm going to keep being persistent because it does work. It does sending the last email, sending the reminders, sending text messages, getting back in front of people. Like, it really does get people to remember they were interested in joining and moves them to take action. Other things that you can do, if someone's been on your list, you can redirect them into, maybe a newsletter. If there's some type of nurturing ongoing after the sequence, a lot of people will just drop their email list after somebody's signed up for a sequence and they don't buy. They don't have a cadence of like sending a newsletter, like, here's a new podcast episode that I just launched. You want to make sure that you're not just letting there be dead air in between the subscriber flows too. If you are going to do the automated reopen of the, like every 12 weeks or so, you send them an email sequence that's like, surprise, this program is open for enrollment again for the next 5 days. You want to make sure there's not just dead air in between those things too. Then also having expired links land gracefully on a page where it's like, oh, it looks like you missed it. Here's some resources for you in the meantime. I think if you can have like frequently asked questions or testimonials or like, hey, listen to this podcast or watch this YouTube video in between, you want to make sure you're continuing to build your relationship with that buyer. Even if they didn't buy that time, they might buy the next time or the next time after that. Also, if there are missed it inquiries, so support triggers, the one-time 3-day window. If somebody is like, oh my gosh, I really wanted to sign up, but I missed the window and they're reaching out to you personally, you can decide if you're going to give them a link to a different webinar or a different sales page that's like only for people who have emailed personally and want to jump in. Maybe you give them some type of 3-day window that's, hey, I created a special link for you because you emailed me. You can go sign up here, but this link will expire in 72 hours. It's kind of a happy hybrid medium of like, I wasn't able to sign up on the training, but I still want to commit. So other things to keep in mind are building an evergreen audit. So if you check off what 8 assets you already have, this is in the workbook, figure out what you can include in your evergreen webinars. Some of this stuff you might have to create from scratch. Some of it might exist already. In the workbook, you can circle what you're missing, what you still need to create, and that's going to help you create a plan for how to build this moving forward. Yeah, and I think there's a template or some type of outline in that workbook too. So the 5th thing we're going to talk about, and I'll try to keep this quick, is the traffic and the math. And the most important thing is knowing where registrations come from and knowing how to judge like who's going to be the warmest, where your best leads are coming from. What I found is people who often come into my Evergreen funnel or buy from the Evergreen funnel are people who bought my tiny offer first and then come into the Evergreen webinar. Some people will have an email list where they've segmented people who came in like the last 30 days. They get an invitation into the webinar. I wouldn't hit your email list everybody every single week if you're going to do a reoccurring cadence like that. I think people will get burned out and they'll unsubscribe really fast if you're like sending the same email every single week. Or the next thing is organic content. I usually, maybe once a month or so would remind people, hey, I have this funnel or this training you can go watch whenever you want, and sharing the link that way. Or paid ads. If you're comfortable with paid ads and you know that your webinar is converting, you can run ads to your Evergreen webinar, and the goal is to usually see at least 3 times return on ad spend for what you're selling in that webinar. Price point can make a difference for that too. If you're selling something that's, $30, it is probably going to be too expensive on the ad side to be profitable from that. But if it's like $2,000 or more, then ads are more likely to be profitable. So you got to make sure that what you're paying for ads, your funnel can make at least as much money. I mean, ideally 2 or 3 times more than you're spending on ads to run ads. So if you have a tiny offer, this is what the cadence looks like for that, where they would get their tiny offer or access to their tiny offer. And then within that email sequence, that's like, hey, welcome, you bought this, XYZ product. And if you want to learn more about how to put it all together, come watch this training and I'll break it all down for you, or I'll give you a behind the scenes of your next steps after buying this tiny offer. And then they can register and then hopefully they'll become a member. Jade says is 2 to 3x a normal reoccurrence when spending money on ads. Yeah, I'd say that's the minimum goal. You want to, especially if you're wanting to scale what you're spending on ads, or you're wanting to, increase the amount that you're spending on ads over time. If you're making 2 to 3 times what you're spending on ads, that's going to give you more room to be able to increase your ad spend. Where if it's, say you're, running a tiny offer and you're making 1.25 back, it's, if you have a bad day of sales, or you have, you need to refresh your ads and you don't do it soon enough, so the ads kind of stop performing the way they were. If you have a 2 to 3x return on ad spend, then it's going to give you more room if ads are volatile as you're spending more, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'd say that's the minimum goal, is 3 to times what you're spending. The framework around the data that I look at for Evergreen webinars are costs per registration. If you are running ads, show up rate, this can make a huge difference on how the webinar is performing. We want at least like 40 to 60% of people to show up live if you're doing it live. If it's an automated Evergreen webinar, you can expect about 25 to 35% of people to actually watch the webinar. And then registration to sale is that R to S number. You want about 1 to 3% of people to buy after watching. Like, remember I said at the beginning of the training, if you were here, when you do the live launch, 3% of people will buy. But this way, 1 to 3% of people can see your offer at all times, instead of just being in that little condensed launch window where 3% or 1 to 3% people will buy from that period. This is just, it's like baseball, like more at bats give you more opportunities to get on base. And I could use any sports analogy. I'm not that sporty, but it seems relatable for this. If you're giving them more opportunities to watch, odds are more people are going to buy just because it's available. And then the other thing to watch is earnings per registrant. So we want to look at how many people are signing up for the whole thing. And then how much are you earning for every person who signs up to watch the webinar? That's a number that we want to make sure we're tracking. The one scaling rule that you want to need, or that you want to think about, is that when your earning per registrant is more than your cost per registrant for 30 straight days, that's when you can start increasing how much you're spending on ads, because you know that you're profitable, you know that you're spending less to get a lead than you're making from the webinar. So it's always this teeter-totter of, you want to make sure that you're spending less on ads than the funnel is paying you, so that the funnel can be profitable. And this will compound over time, because when you're doing a launch, you're kind of starting over every single time you do it. Your numbers aren't as easy to understand or optimize. Where if you're doing this reoccurring, you can watch how one change in the funnel is suddenly increasing your numbers even by a little bit, and you can keep tweaking things and watch the data change week over week. So when you calculate your earnings per registrant, the way you're going to do this is look at 90 days of how much you've made from your webinar. You're going to look at how many people have registered. So you're going to look at how much you made divided by the amount of people that signed up for your webinar. And that's how you're going to find some of this data. If you don't have data, you want to make sure that your price is about 1% of registrants, or that it's your price times 1% of registrations. That's what you could assume is buying from the webinar. And then figure out, what are you able to spend on ads? Like, knowing that those numbers would hold steady, could you run ads towards this and still be profitable, knowing what your cost per registration on ads needs to be for your webinar to start making sense, or to keep making sense. And then part 6, this is the last portion of the training, upgrades and a 30-day plan. We're going to talk about how to optimize a funnel. Like, how do you know what to change? How do you know what to think about? How do you add on if you have a lower ticket Evergreen funnel? So you can think about adding an upsell, like maybe they can add on a one-on-one call with you, or maybe if you're selling a course, maybe they can add on Boxer access, or they can add on, a separate community. There are cool things that you can do to add upsells onto even a lower ticket program. I also have a client that has like a $3,000 program, and she added on I think it was a $500 upsell where they can extend their amount of time in the program, or they can add on like an extra coaching call each week or something for $500. So there's some cool ways to take your offer and then add an upsell, and some percentage of people will add that on and increase overall the amount that you're making. Other things that you can think about is the opposite of that is a downsell. So if someone goes through your Evergreen sequence, they see the fast action price, they see the standard price, and they still don't buy. Maybe there's a smaller version of the program that they can buy. Maybe, it's like 25% of the cost of what you were selling. Maybe it's a shorter time period. Maybe it's just the course. For a long time, I sold my group coaching program for $6K. People went through the whole Evergreen sequence, or went through the whole sequence. And if they never ended up buying it, it was, hey, do you want the course only for $997 or something like that? And a good chunk of people would end up buying only the course because they weren't group coaching people, or they weren't interested, or they didn't, they weren't interested in making an investment of the $6K amount, but the $997 amount brought back a big portion of buyers that would have maybe never bought anything if I hadn't added it there. Other things you can do are extended payments. So you close the cart and then you come back and you're like, oh, I've heard from a lot of people that they need a longer buying or an extended payment plan. Now you can get a 12-month payment plan for X amount per month. That's another way to do it. You can also go back to your audience after you've closed the cart and say, hey, if you want a sale, or not a sales call, but if you want to talk to a human about this, I might have other options available for you. Go ahead and book a call. You can put that in your emails. Other things you can do are like an automated challenge that follows up after the Evergreen webinar. You can add in seasonal windows, kind of like a hybrid approach that you might do something live. So you lead with the Evergreen, and then maybe, Black Friday, for example, you have a different option that you're opening, or, like with Katie, who was on earlier, she's got kids that are in students. So she could say, back to school specials, or spring break special, or, like get ready for finals special. Like she could look at her specific audience and see what kind of things they need seasonally that she could open cart or have another reason to keep showing up and making noise about what it is that she has. So this is the advanced layer where a few times a year you can do a launch where you're still opening cart to your whole email list. It could be public facing, could be on social media, could be something that you mention as a real time period. It's not Evergreen anymore. It's a live, could be your live quarterly challenge, or it could be a live webinar that you're running. It could be different things that you are, making noise about publicly, not just behind the scenes on your email list anymore. Now it's more like a typical launch. So something that you need to do is if you are doing kind of behind the scenes segmentation where only a chunk of your email list is getting more like an evergreen, where it's opening for a little bit of time only to that period, and it's based on 12 weeks after they saw the evergreen offer, 6 months after they saw the evergreen offer. You want to make sure they're not getting like double promo, where if they're inside of an active promotion period on your email list, you want to make sure they're being blocked from getting the live promotion too, if that makes sense. Because we want to make sure that you're not hitting them with two different offers at the same time. That would be really confusing. But these can work because people who maybe already faced an expired deadline, they're getting a fresh offer with a real person. Maybe they just needed to see you live. Maybe they needed to get on a call with you, or a Zoom call or a webinar with you, to see that you're a real human, ask some questions live, confirm that it's the best fit for them. And maybe they do end up buying, even though they've been in this evergreen cycle for a little while. I think that hybrid can work really well. And this works easily as for the ethics and the honesty of it, because it is a live open window, but you're not reliant on that as a creator, because you're not, that's not the only time you're making money inside your business, but it can be a good cash injection, or it could be fun to get some of those people off the fence that just needed something live, even if you're, more reliant on the evergreen for your consistent evergreen. So if you're going to build this today, I would say week 1, you could figure out what your offer is, how you're going to structure it for rolling enrollment. Look at what levers you're able to pull inside of your community, what enrollment week looks like, what the different prices are that you could offer it for. Week 2, set up the front of the funnel, so the opt-in page, figure out that that's working. Write your first handful of emails. Week 3, you can create the webinar. Maybe you run it live once to your list, or maybe you promote it live, and then you record that version and use that as your evergreen version that you're going to put inside of your automation afterwards. And then week 4, you build it into the automation where you're opening up the sales window, you're figuring out the email sequences that go with it, and then you put it all together and you have an evergreen webinar in just about 4 weeks. You can do it in much less time too, but that's a good cadence to think about to be able to get it done. So what I would say, giving you permission to skip the first time around, you don't have to have a crazy fancy sales page design. Plain and alive and ready to get people into it is going to convert better than trying to get that first step perfect. You can always improve it as you go. You don't have to have text messages, the SMS, retargeting, everything on the version 2 menu. You can skip all of that to begin with. You don't have to have the perfect webinar. You're going to improve it over time as you get feedback from people who don't buy, if you have your sequences that you're sending people. And I think done is better than perfect, right? It's like what I have to remind myself all the time too. But the cool thing about automation is that you can listen to people, you can re-record, you can just upload it again and not have to be putting in your time weekly doing it. Or, if you're crazy like me and you like doing it weekly, you can learn every single week as you're live with people. So the whole thing in just the 6 decisions that you can make today are picking the offer type, the mechanism of how you want to talk about it, how you want to get it out there, live, evergreen. Think about the vehicle. Is it, weekly live? Is it a challenge? Is it an evergreen webinar, on-demand webinar? And then think about your restructuring the current offer that you have so that it fits with these different deadlines. Write the webinar, including the promise, the pillars, and the honest close that does have the expiring urgency and scarcity in it. I use Go High Level, but you can build this in lots of different types of trainings, or not training softwares. So that's in the workbook too, to understand the different tech pieces that are involved with evergreen webinars. And then watch the data, and you can start growing it when your earning outweighs the cost of what it takes to get someone on that training. And then after that, you can keep adding enhancements. You can add upsells, downsells, cross sells, whatever you want, sales calls. You can add all that stuff after you've got it up and running, because simple scales, I'd rather see you get it up and running than make it fancy early on. All right, so the easiest way to start this is to do it live the first time, get it recorded. So something you can do after this training today is put a date on the calendar, give yourself, maybe you're doing it in the fall. If you have kids at home and you want to get kids back at school, you could do your first live webinar. Julie, what does that mean? You could put it, yes, I know. Kids, is that what that is? Yes. So get it up. Maybe it's in September. Maybe it's like get everybody back to school, and then mid-September or end of September, you do it live for the first time, and then you package that recording, get it evergreen. Maybe it's easier for you to record it on your own in your office at, some time when you have a little bit of extra time to do that. You could get it up and running that way. If you can't do it live, oh yeah, built-in action steps. Yes, and inside of the workbook too. So if you can pick a date a few weeks out, that'll give you time to pace into it. And then if you are inside of the accelerator level of the school group, if you want to ask questions about your one-pager or your plan for your evergreen webinar, we can talk about that on the coaching calls as well, or you can share it in the school group just as text. If you aren't in the accelerator level and you don't have the calls, you can still share it in the group either way. I went a little over 217. That was not quite 2 hours every time. One of these days I will nail it. But if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I know that was a lot of information. So if you need to digest and then ask questions in our school group later, that is welcome as well. And yeah, my biggest call to action for you from this training is put that first date on the calendar and then reverse engineer from there. So figure out all the steps that you can get done. I love a deadline, and I love, no matter what, I will ship it on that day. And I know I have to get it at least done enough to be able to get people into it without me feeling embarrassed about it. So sometimes that's the best accountability ever, is just a date on the calendar. Cool. Okay. Well, any questions? I'll give you a couple minutes to type, maybe not minutes, but a couple seconds. I'll take a drink because I'm losing my voice. Cool. All right. Well, thanks for being here, everybody. I'll see you inside of school. I hope you have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.